across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be your host all the way until 10 o'clock. Stand by for 3 unmissable hours of news, views and topical debate. Don't forget, get involved, get on the show, get on the phone and call me on 0344 499 1000, or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number. And I promise to play your message out. It is Tuesday, June the 24th. Here's what's coming up. With the Israel and Iran conflict on the brink of all-out war and America joining in the bombing of Iran, wouldn't you think that the people of Britain have a right to know where their government stands? But no! Neither Tuti Akir or that ludicrous joke of a Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, seem able to tell us which side we're on. They won't even say whether or not they believe Trump's raid on Iran's nuclear sites was legal. What's wrong with these people? Do they support Tehran or something? 0344 499 1000. And what will Starmer do about Labour MP Zara Zoltana, who, ahead of her government's prescribing of the virtue-signalling idiots who vandalised 2 planes at RAF Bryce Norton, tweeted, "We're all Palestine action now." You might be, Zara, but your boss, the Prime Minister, very much isn't. Should Starmer kick out Zara? 0344 499 1000. In other news, I'll ask Rod Liddle why an immigration tribunal judge refused to deport an Albanian heroin dealer pictured with £250,000 in cash. Was it because the judge is a left-wing moron? 0344 499 1000. Also tonight, the asylum seeker rape problem. Are the authorities covering up sexual assaults by migrants? It looks like they might be. 0344 499 1000. And Lucy Connelly, the housewife mother, banged up for posting hurty words on Twitter 2 years and 7 months after the Southport riots. Well, apparently she is in a bad way. Reform UK Deputy Leader Richard Tice has visited Lucy in jail, and the story is not a happy one. Richard joins us later. 0344 499 1000. Plus, the primary school kids getting lessons on the 300 different LGBTQ flags and what they represent. Should this pseudo-scientific claptrap be taught to young children? Or is this just flat-out brainwashing? 0344 499 1000. And the lunacy of Britain's energy policies as business secretary, you know, that funny little man who pretends he's a solicitor, the business secretary announces that the government is keen to get us off the bottom of the charts as the country with the most expensive energy bills in the world. Wouldn't that be nice? Or, better still, how about sacking that madman, crazy Ed Miliband? 0344 499 1000. Plus, the migrants earning £1,000 a week when they're not supposed to be working, making good money while British taxpayers pay their hotel and food bills, and they get £50 a week in benefits. Good, isn't it? 0344 499 1000. And finally, the latest in the Middle East as F-bombing Donald Trump loses his temper with both Iran and Israel. That ceasefire, what do you reckon? 0344 499 1000. You've heard of endangered species? Well, have a look at that ceasefire, seriously. All that and so much more, so don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Tuesday night together. Almost forgot the night there. All right, let's go over to my first guest. I love Tuesday nights because they begin with the great Rod Little, columnist for The Sun, The Sunday Times, The Spectator, also presenter of Times Radio's Saturday morning show from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. and also now The Sunday Times' TV critic. Is there no end to this man's jobs? How are you, Rod? All right?
I'm not so bad, mate. Thanks for the introduction. I'm overworked and underpaid, obviously.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah,
well, we both work for the same company. I just got us both fired. There you go. Right, let's talk about this government. I broached this subject last night, and I do think, you know, I don't want to sort of expect too much of this government. But don't you feel that, you know, on the brink of world war, Israel and Iran bombing the hell out of each other, and the extraordinary development of Donald Trump involving America in the bombing of Iran, you know, notwithstanding what you feel about any of that, don't you think that the people of Britain have a right to know where their government stands on this? Do they think it's legal? They won't say that. Do they support Donald Trump in what he did? They won't say that. I mean, this is the moment where this government, I believe, has just spilled into a kind of absurdity. They won't tell us where they stand on this extraordinary international development in the Middle East. What is going on with these people?
Look, Kev, call me a spavined liberal gibbon, if you will. I have some sympathy with Starmer on this, and it stems from the fact that I think he's handled Donald Trump rather well. I'm not talking about Lammy. Lammy is a moron and a blight upon the government, and it is shameful that he is our foreign secretary, because this is a man with the IQ of a faulty Indesit fridge freezer, you know. I mean, but Starmer has worked quite well with Trump in that he basically hasn't reacted to anything Trump's done.
Yeah. I'll give him that. I agree with that. You've got to be careful with it, Donald. And
you have got to be careful.
Yeah.
And at the moment, quite clearly, but the USA and Israel and Iran think that Europe is of no importance whatsoever in this burgeoning Third World War. Perhaps we might become important at some point in the future when one of these countries has to store weapons here or something. But we are of no importance whatsoever. Israel is called us an unreliable ally. Donald Trump has said Iran wants to talk to us, doesn't want to talk to Europe. Why would anyone want to talk to? Can you imagine? No, I really think we should talk to Emmanuel Macron about this. I mean, it's just.
He's ruled it illegal, by the way. He's ruled the whole bombing rate. It's illegal according to Paris. Thank you, Emmanuel.
This is all very beneficial for Starmer. It keeps him out of what is a controversial raid if you're a moron, but also keeps the left of his party at bay. The left of his party probably thinks we should be bombing Israel instead.
That's true.
You know,
as does David Lammy, if you ask me.
Well, as does David Lammy. Well, David Lammy doesn't know where Israel is. He doesn't know where Iran is. He has no clue about anything which is going on. The man is a plank of wood. But there we are.
Well, the thing is, though, it does seem to me, I mean, I take your point. I just feel that, Lammy in particular has made a complete fool of himself over the past 2 days. But Starmer too. I mean, it's not too much to ask, is it? Do you support, or does Britain support, what Donald Trump did at the weekend, lining up with Israel, or not? Is it that much to ask?
Yes, but because it then it then begs further questions. You see, I am entirely on board with what the US and Israel have done to get rid of Iran's nuclear threat.
Yeah,
entirely. I am not with them on the idea of regime change, because what happens with regime change, it's a very nebulous affair. And what almost always happens in the Middle East is that you end up with a government far worse than the one that was originally.
Yeah.
So I don't have much time for that. In a way, it's quite useful for Starmer to be standing back. But yes, I think he should have said, and he's kind of hinted at it, that we do not want an Iran with nuclear weapons. It follows from that clearly they were trying to procure nuclear weapons, albeit fairly primitive nuclear weapons. Otherwise, they wouldn't need to be, enriching uranium up to 20, 30%, and even 60%, which is what we've heard.
Yeah.
So it would have been good if you could have been clear about that. But you never know what way Trump is going to go. And if Trump is of a mind to go for regime change, which I think would be a betrayal of almost everything Trump said over the last 8 years about foreign affairs, and I very much hope he doesn't do it, then I think we're best out of it, frankly.
I think Netanyahu's mistake here is to kind of assume that if they bomb the hell out of Tehran, of Iran generally, that the regime will fall because the people will sort of just rise up organically.
No.
Well, but you cannot bet on that. That is a ludicrously long shot to bank on. That is the problem, and I agree with you. Let's not talk about regime change. And when Donald Trump started going down that road, I think he's made a mistake. Actually, I think the best outcome here was Israel carry on bombing the hell out of them till there's nothing left of them. But that old git, the Ayatollah, 86 years old and on his last legs, continues to be the quotes supreme close quotes leader, but he's as weak as hell. That's probably the best outcome. But I still think underlying this is this fear that Starmer's reticence here to sort of get involved and say where we stand. I think he should say we support what Donald Trump did, but he won't. But that
yes, he should say that. You're absolutely right. He should at least say that.
Yeah, and here's the reason why I think he doesn't, and this is what worries me. There is still this underlying suspicion that British foreign policy is being dictated by 1.5 million Muslim votes, the Muslim votes that Starmer is absolutely obsessed with. That's my worry here.
I think there's a point in that. I don't entirely buy it. I mean, you've cited the case of that ludicrous woman, Sultana.
Yeah.
Sultana should be in a Christmas cake or a semolina pudding. They shouldn't be in Parliament. She has been an embarrassment to the Labour Party and to the government ever since she first achieved high office. She's appalling. I think Starmer is probably more worried about the reaction of the various people in his party who believe that Israel is the fount of all evil and that there's no other evil going on anywhere in the world. This really is the cretinous level of intelligence that people like Lammy and those like him have. And I think he's trying to keep that a bit quiet. But further than that, I don't know. He was right about Palestine action. He was right to say, he was right to prescribe the group as being terrorist. That was a bold move, and he got it right. And there are plenty of people in his party who want him dead for that alone. So, I'm not the greatest admirer of him. I think he's a machine politician without an ounce of principle. But he's got it right on that issue.
I think he has. What do you make of...
did I send you to sleep by saying all that about those nice things? About,
yeah,
I noticed you kind of nodding off there. And there was this really weird thing.
Yeah, tell me,
you
Ron,
were nodding off.
Yeah, tell me what you...
On the other side of the screen, there was a picture of David Lammy.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is awful. This is like being in hell.
Yeah.
I'm boring my friend, and Lammy is taking over.
No, I was going to say to you, so, Rod, tell me what it is that you admire about Keir Starmer. And before you answer, let me just put these matchsticks in my eyes to keep them open. But seriously, Zara Sultana, what should he do about her? I know she's a joke, but you can't have a reasonably prominent member of the government's party, the Labour Party, tweeting, "We are all Palestine action now," after the government, as you quite rightly say, Rod, quite rightly decided to prescribe that organisation. He needs to kick her out of the party, doesn't he? Or at least out of the parliamentary party.
Yes,
like right now, yes?
Prescribe Zara Sultana and send her off to join up forces with George Galloway. You know, the Labour Party will have to come down on one side at some point in the next 4 years, before the next election, as to whether it wishes to curry favour with Muslim voters who hold the key to perhaps 20 or 30 seats. Who knows, by 2029, maybe 40 or 50 seats, but there we are, 20 or 30 seats at the moment. He needs to be clear about whether he stands for Britain or for Islam.
Well, yeah, and therein lies the problem. And, I think you're right. I think his main reticence in terms of what he should have done, which is to say we support what Donald Trump did or what America did, his reticence. I said he's worried about the 1.5 Muslim votes that he craves, which I think is a factor. But I think you're right. More to the point, he's worried about the more extreme.
He's worried about Owen Jones.
He's worried about his party. He's worried about the members of his party. Indeed, he's the many MPs that will cause him problems.
He's worried about the moron left.
Yeah.
You know, and there is a moron left, and it believes that everything that Britain does is wrong. And it's suddenly decided that it's now a champion of Iran, perhaps applauding the height of the cranes from which they hang homosexuals. You know, it's remarkable.
Where they hang members of Queers for Palestine, yes.
Yes, that's right, exactly. So at some point, the Labour Party has to be clear about this. Let's be fair. It lost an awful lot of Muslim votes when Sir Keir Starmer refused to condemn Israel for a long time after October the 7th. And so the Muslim vote for Labour, which was at 70%, suddenly reduced. Yeah. And it's reducing all the time. The hope is that he will have the sense and the pragmatism to see that it is no use keeping the Muslim vote if it stands against everything that we as a country believe in. You know.
Indeed. Now, listen, before we go to break, I've got one quick question for you. I'd like you to answer it reasonably briefly. What do you think would be the best course of action for this country in terms of what we do with this bloke, this guy, Lord Richard Hermer, the Attorney General? What do you think we should do with him?
I think Hermer is the biggest problem we have in government. I think he's an embarrassment to Starmer, even though they're close friends. I think he's playing exactly the same role as the utterly, utterly odious Charlie Faulkner, who did the same thing for Tony Blair. It's all about rule by lawyers, and I would prefer it if Hermer was shifted off to a solicitor's office somewhere in Oswestry, where he was charged with looking at planning disputes. I think he is an abomination, and easily worse than Ed Miliband. Easily the worst. The
most dangerous member of the government. Yeah.
In this government.
I'll tell you what I'd do. I'd give him generously. I'd give him a mud hut in the Chagos Islands and a fishing boat, so he could earn a living. So he can get, if he wants to give the islands away, he can go and live there.
Yes, but I would do that only if we could then sell that particular little island to North Korea.
Exactly. Well, he'd like that. He'd like that. You know, I've got to go to break, but this is what these people, I mean, I think Starmer's like this as well. I remember, it was a long time ago, but when I was at school and then latterly, well, probably, I think I'd even grown out of it by the time I got to university. I remember being at school going, yeah, Britain thinks it's an empire. It's useless now and it's weak and we're all pretend living on our past glories. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. pathetic, we're weak and we're useless now. That's what these people are still like. That's what Herma is still like. He needs to grow.
No, it's worse. It's worse. He doesn't believe in democracy. He believes in lawyers.
Yes, that's right.
You know, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem with Herma.
Yeah, that's what Richard Littlejohn says about Keir Starmer, Sir Keir as he calls him. The problem with Sir Keir is that he's a complete and utter total lawyer, and that's about sums these people up. Let's go to break, and when we come back, Rob, we're going to talk about something you wrote about in your column. It's a story we covered last week as well, but it's worth talking about. The heroin kingpin allowed to stay in Britain because a judge thinks it's fine. We'll talk about that next.
We obviously were not involved in Russia's invasion of Ukraine, for instance, and yet we, of course, have regularly expressed opinions on that invasion and done our bit to support Ukraine in that. Why can we not say where we stand on this issue? And the truth is, of course, is they don't want to give an answer because they don't want to offend the Americans and trade away our last remaining scraps of influence. But they also know they can't come out because they are very much in the belief that this is going to be a breach of international law. They want to stick by international law. Yeah. But, of course, then leaves them with ministers unable to say anything.
If you look at Iran, they probably welcome the chance to have a breather. They are on the ropes at the moment and therefore would welcome some sort of ceasefire. But why would Israel agree? They've got their foot on the throat of Iran. They were pummeling away at their missile capability and the nuclear capability. So why did they agree to stop? And I was just wondering whether this was pressure brought by President Trump to be seen as the peacemaker, but an uneasy truce. And as soon as anything happened...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Still talking to prolific columnist and the host of Times Radio's Saturday morning show, Rod Liddle. Rod, I billed this as the strange but unsurprising case of Albanian heroin dealer Olsi Behali. Now, I covered this story last week. You wrote about it in your column. Now, the thing about this guy is he did 11 years in jail for being a prolific heroin and cocaine dealer. As you said, one of the great master criminals of all time had a picture taken of himself surrounded by £250,000 in cash.
Yeah, he's a moron.
Yeah, well, he's obviously a moron. But at the end of his sentence, he was due for deportation. And in these cases, it's worth stressing counterintuitively, that the villains are never the Home Office. They're the good guys in these cases. They're always trying to deport these scumbags that shouldn't be in this country anymore. So the Home Office is trying to deport Mr. Behali at the end of his 11-year stretch. And it comes before a tribunal, immigration tribunal judge. And the Home Office said, we've got to get rid of him because not only is he a heroin dealer, look, here's a picture of him. Surrounded by all this cash, £250,000. He's a massive bigwig. He's a gang leader. You know, we have to deport him. And the judge said, well, that's just a photograph. We've got no physical evidence that he's a gang leader. Therefore, he can stay. The judge doesn't contest that he was a heroin dealer, but he says, well, you know, he was a heroin dealer, but he wasn't like a kind of leading heroin dealer, therefore he can stay. That's the story. What is it with these immigration lawyers? I asked these judges, I asked at the start of the show, is it because this guy, might even be a woman, the judge, is a left-wing moron?
Yes, I thought when we mentioned that at the beginning of the show, that it was a rhetorical question, Kev.
Yeah, well, it kind of was.
It kind of was, yes. And therefore the answer to it is yes. And it's true of so many. It's true of the judge who decided that the guy shouldn't be deported back to Albania because his children or child didn't like the way they cooked chicken nuggets in the Balkans.
I thought that was quite a good reason. I don't know if you ever tried chicken nuggets in Albania, but they're not to be recommended. So I thought that was actually a good reason. But it's getting upset. There's a guy in the papers this weekend who a Sri Lankan who doesn't have to go back to Sri Lanka because he doesn't like the idea of it. So he was.
I think my favourite one of those was the child rapist or whatever he was, who didn't get sent back to Pakistan because the judge thought that his family would look darkly upon how he'd behaved and perhaps cause him some form of sadness.
Well, that's their default setting, these immigration tribunal judges, that they sort of say, well, this guy's done 6 years in jail as a paedophile in this country, and if he goes back to Somalia, Somalians take a very dim view of paedophiles, as if we in Britain really celebrate them and think they're fantastic. I mean, what is going on with these courts?
It is the biggest problem we have, which is the takeover of our institutions by cretinous liberals. I mean, truly cretinous liberals. And this is the case in the immigration tribunal, where all are simultaneously working and tribunals as representing heroin dealers who are raped. Minded in one way already. It is an absolute disgrace. The whole thing, I think they all need sacking. The lot. It's far more important and probably far more difficult to deal with than extricating ourselves from the European Convention on Human Rights, which everyone says is a problem. It's not the problem. The problem is these morons.
Yeah. In actual fact, you're exactly right, Rod. The real problem, it would be good to get out of the ECHR. It does cause a lot of problems. But the real problem we have is not, in the end, the European Convention on Human Rights. It's the way that these Guardian-reading immigration tribunal judges choose to interpret the ECHR. So get rid of it by all means. But unless we get some judges who are actually kind of keen or interested in the safety of this nation, the welfare of this nation, perhaps the welfare of children, you know, who they don't mind sort of opening up to the dangers of paedophiles in their midst. Unless we get some judges who start worrying about Britain instead of working against our interests, leaving the ECHR will not be that effective.
No, that's right. The whole thing needs dozing properly, you know, right from top to bottom. And, you know, I think the Home Office knows this. I think the government has an idea about this. You know, you talk to some of the more sensible Labour ministers, people like Shamana Mahmood and Wes Streeting and John Healey. I mean, they would agree with this.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I mean, we need a system of discipline for judges. There's no comeback on judges.
No,
I mean,
there's no comeback.
Not only can we...
Often you don't even get to find out what their names are,
Yeah.
so that you can't go round to their house and have a poo in their garden, which is what I
Exactly. I mean, you know, that should be every citizen of this country's right to go and crap in the garden of a useless judge.
Exactly.
And on that bombshell, that was a joke, folks. You have to stress this crap sometimes, Rod, you really do. Look forward to your show and your various columns this week, mate. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much. That's the great Rod Liddle, the unique Rod Liddle, columnist at The Sun, Sunday Times, The Spectator, host of Times Radio. Saturday morning show 10 until 1 p.m. He's also the TV critic of the Sunday Times. You cannot avoid him, but it's good because he's a great writer. He's a great writer, arguably the best. Right, when we come back to Tim Montgomery, we have lots of stories to discuss. Stick around.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Guess who's in the studio? It is Reform UK luminary. I never know what to call him, really. Former Tory luminary, now Reform UK luminary, Tim Montgomery. Welcome.
Thank you. We're going to have a fight about the air conditioning level in the studio, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, I've just had the air conditioning turned down. I hope that'll be to your liking. Jeremy Kyle, I don't know what he is, but he needs very high temperatures. It's like a bloody sauna in here, I'll tell you. Right, first of all, let's talk, if you don't mind, Tim, about what I would call the asylum seeker rape problem. Now, this is in essence, this is the toxic cocktail of young men arriving in sexualised Britain from countries where women aren't even permitted to show their toes. They arrive here, from Muslim countries, women are covered up, and they arrive in Britain where we have the Kim Kardashian OnlyFans culture, girls, dressed sexually. They've got every right to do so. I'm glad that they do. It's a free country and all that. However, these guys arrive here, and this is a recipe for disaster, and it looks like that disaster is beginning to happen. We saw a couple of weeks ago, and spilling into last week, the riots in Ballymena. which were caused by the charging of 2 young 14-year-old migrants from Romania with the rape of a local girl. Also, last week we covered the story of an Afghani migrant who crossed the channel in a small boat illegally 2 years ago. I mean, and almost instantly was transported to Scotland, billeted up there in Falkirk, almost instantly approached a 15-year-old girl, asked her if she had a boyfriend, could he have her phone number, before dragging her behind the back of a local pub in Falkirk and raping her. Now, we've subsequently learned, and I think this is a very disturbing story at the weekend, that councillors in Southsea, the seaside bit of Portsmouth, were ordered, if you like, certainly asked to keep quiet the fact that a guy charged with the rape of a local woman was in fact a migrant staying at the local asylum seeker hotel, which is called the Royal Beach Hotel. So they were asked to keep that quiet.
Learning nothing from the grooming gang.
Well, quite. And then we learned there quite possibly are similar cases in Manchester and London where an asylum seeker, maybe more, accused, charged with the rape of local women, but the authorities are so worried about the potential incendiary effect of that on the local community, as we saw in Ballymena, 5 nights of rioting, that they're keeping this stuff quiet. Now, what I would say about this is I can understand that impulse. It's not healthy to keep anything secret from the public, but that is no solution, is it, to this rising problem. I just want to add a couple of other cases. So this guy, the Afghani guy in Falkirk, his defence was this, just to sort of crystallise what we're talking about. His defence was this: nobody told me about the cultural differences between Afghanistan and Britain. In other words, you know, in Afghanistan they're pretty relaxed about rape. He discovered to his horror that over here we're not, and he got 12 years. He went furious. He was furious. It was
our fault.
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah. Now, and now we learn of a shocking case of a Qatari camel herder. I covered this last night as well. Brought to Britain for heart surgery. Seems kind of strange, but he was. And to put into the Chelsea's Royal Brompton Hospital for surgery, for heart surgery, and he raped a woman there. And again, he said, well, the problem is back in my home country, Qatar, I had little interaction with women. Now, this syndrome is a real problem. And I'm afraid that just pretending it's not happening, which is what they try to do in Southsea, what they're apparently doing in London and Manchester as we speak, trying to pretend it's not happening, that is not the way to solve this issue.
It'll make it worse in the long run, like it's a simmering pan, isn't it? You can keep the lid on that simmering pan for a little while, and on the surface it looks like you've managed to maintain the calm. But it's bubbling and it's bubbling and it's bubbling. And when eventually that lid comes off, it'll be worse. So you're right, it's not a solution. The fundamental solution is we need to be an awful lot more discriminating about who we let into this country. Now,
that was the underlying point I was not successfully making.
Well, we can repeat and magnify each other's points. Look, both of us, I think, are worried about the volume of immigration. That's one issue. But you look at previous generations who came to Britain. You look at what Britain was. People loved the idea of joining our country. They liked Englishness. They liked our values. They liked what we were. Then they brought a little bit of their culture. But the people who used to come to this country, they wanted to be British in a true sense of that. Yeah. Now, a lot of the immigration we have are from people and cultures who actually look at us and perhaps don't like us very much, partly because we've changed. And they want to change us. They want to come here and live the life that they did back home. We should say, look, fine if you want to live like that, but you don't do that in Britain. We have a set of values, and if you can't abide by those, you are not welcome. That's a common sense position that ultimately would serve both sides of this equation. But to sort of say that, you're almost accused of being racist or shutting the door to people. But I tell you what, Kevin, the politician or political party that can get to that position will get the overwhelming support of the British people.
Indeed, I couldn't agree with you more. And what we've got going on here is the political establishment trying to cover up, keep secret, if you like, the powder keg aspect of what's going on. The result of this come one, come all migration policy, that anybody can come in. We literally every year, because we're not just talking about the illegal migrants, probably about 50, 60,000 this year will come across the channel the way it's going. But we're talking also about the vast number of legal migrants who come in. Previously, as many as 1 million a year. Well, I think we're down to about 700, 600,000.
No, only that.
Yeah.
Still record on any period.
Not even worth mentioning anymore. But I know for a fact that the legal migrants who come in, many of them, of course, young men, are not asked any question. They're asked one question: did you commit any crimes back in your home country? Yeah, people aren't wont to say yes. 46, many of them rape. You know, they're not going to. So we are letting in hundreds of thousands of young men.
And you know, Kevin, we don't actually know how many people we're letting in. I don't know whether all of your listeners know this, but we don't do normal in-out checks that most countries do. We do surveys. We're pathetic. We don't even know who's coming in on legal routes, let alone illegal routes. And no wonder people think we are a soft touch if we can't even do basic things like count people in and out. And back to the
But if it also, Tim, that we can't make the basic decision that if we don't know anything about you, you can't come into this country. However, we're letting in hundreds of thousands of young men every year without knowing anything at all about them, both illegal and legal.
I can stop you there and correct you, actually. I don't know whether you've seen any of the government propaganda, but all immigrants built this society.
Oh, yes, that's right. Windruff.
Yes,
we were nothing until Windruff.
No, look, lots of the Windruff generation were great.
But we were doing okay before they got here.
Exactly.
We didn't need them to build our society.
We're not a young country. We've been around the block once or twice.
We didn't start in 1950, did we?
And, you know, just treat us like adults. We can cope with the fact that lots of immigrants are brilliant, but there's some bad apples there. If you just give us propaganda, all immigrants are wonderful and there isn't any problem, people will stop trusting anything you say, and integration then becomes a problem. Treat us like adults and we'll behave like adults.
But I do think that this, the sexual crime aspect of this is a building powder keg. It's going to get worse. And now the point is, as we've discovered in Ballymena, and if that happens around the country, that the local communities find out that an asylum seeker has been charged or arrested for rape, no matter what the veracity of that is, the local community will rise up and we will get Ballymenas all over this country all throughout the summer, don't you think?
I do. And, you know, the left rightly want to sort of champion and protect immigrants. But, you know, I used to remember when they used to champion women's rights. That used to be, you know, really matter. And that probably was the primary thing. But that's now put out of the window. Even though there's lots of evidence, you know, a lot of the attacks on London buses against women throughout the country are from immigrants. And if you really are a party of equality for women, that should matter to you.
And also, as a government, as a country, we've got to make a stand. We've got to say, if you're going to come and live in this country, if we're going to let you into this country, we have to know about you. You can't just turn up and say, oh, yeah, well, I lost my passport. You can't do that. We've got to know about you. And if we don't, what we saw in Falkirk, what we saw in the Chelsea hospital, what we saw in Ballymena. We're going to see more and more and more of it by the law of averages, and that is not a good thing, folks. Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. And what I'm saying is, do we need to actually say, if you haven't got your passport or documents, you can't come in? Do we need to start saying this? I think we do. Let me know. 0344 499 1000. When we come back to him, we're going to talk about Lucy Connelly. That is the poor lady who got 2 years and 7 months for posting hurty words on social media during the Southport riots. She's still inside. We understand she's not in a good way. So we'll talk about that after this break. Stay tuned.
I just find it extraordinary that you and Labour MPs, 108 of them, apparently don't accept that we've seen a massive explosion in this. We can't afford it. We cannot have, I think it's one in eight people of working age not working and claiming some of these benefits. The numbers don't add up.
We can't afford to not afford it, Julia. If we're going to do a welfare state, we've got to do a welfare state.
A welfare state should be people who need it, not people who feel anxious on a Monday morning about going to work because it might be raining.
We obviously were not involved in Russia's invasion of Ukraine, for instance, and yet we, of course, have regularly expressed opinions on that invasion and done our bit to support Ukraine in that. Why can we not say where we stand on this issue? And the truth is, of course, is they don't want to state the given answer because they don't want to offend the Americans and trade away our last remaining scraps of influence. But they also know they can't come out because they are very much in the belief that this is going to be a breach of international law. They want to stick by international law. But, of course, then leaves them with ministers unable to say anything.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Tim Montgomery. What do we call it? Reform luminary. Luminary. We like luminary. Now,
do I have to pay you £5 every time you say that?
Yes, you do. I'll send you the bill. Now, let's talk about Lucy Connelly. She, of course, is the poor lady who was given a rather severe sentence, to say the least, for writing a few hurty words on X on Twitter during the Southport riots. Nobody condones what she wrote. She wrote it in a temper. She was furious. She's a mum. She was sympathising with the three mums of those people.
A mum who lost a daughter in her private life, which is not an irrelevant fact.
There are mitigating circumstances for what she wrote, but nobody is condoning it. It isn't the point. It was a few words by a woman hundreds of miles from Southport.
One thing I would challenge is they weren't just hurty words; they were horrible words.
All right, horrible.
You know, I don't think we should diminish them.
Honestly, Tim, I don't care how horrible they are. I don't want to live in a country that sends people to jail for things that
but they were a bit more than a few hurty words. They were pretty incendiary at that time.
Okay, fair enough. Although I don't think they had any effect on those riots whatsoever. I think we can definitely accept that.
Yeah.
She shouldn't be in jail now. However, she still is. She got 2 years and 7 months. One of 12 people out of 385 who were jailed for the riots, those summer riots last year in the wake of Southport. 385 jailed, 12 for stuff they wrote on social media. None of those 12 should have gone to jail. Lucy Connelly got this extraordinary sentence of 2 years and 7 months, which was considerably longer than some of the people throwing bricks and trying to set fire to hotels. So that was
people who burgle houses.
It's just mad, absolutely mad. She's still in jail. Now, we've had her husband on, Raymond, a couple of times. He's a Tory councillor in Northampton. So lovely guy, absolutely distraught.
Not a coincidence, by the way, in my view.
Exactly. Remember that
she was married to a Conservative councillor.
They've got a 12-year-old daughter who has been difficult during her mother's. She's been upset during her mother's imprisonment, as you might imagine. Anyway, Richard Tice, the deputy leader of Reform UK, went to visit Lucy in jail, and he's going to join us later. He can't come on earlier, but he is going to join us after 9 o'clock and tell us about what he found when he was in there. But the story is, and we've kind of heard this through independent sources, that poor Lucy is really not doing well because they've made a point of not giving her privileges. Oh, it's Lucy Connelly, you've got to go down tough on her. The Prime Minister wants to make a test case of her, etc.
I thought the Prime Minister didn't know anything about that case. Do you remember that interview he gave once?
Yeah, well, in that respect, as in so many other respects, the Prime Minister's just a barefaced liar. Anyway, Lucy Connelly, apparently she's been manhandled, she's been handcuffed. She's not allowed. Nearly everybody in her position would about once a month be allowed back on a Saturday to see their kid. She's never allowed to do this. And it's getting her down. Apparently she's in a very, very bad way. She's expected to be released in August. But the fact that this, normal, respectable, middle-class woman is banged up and in a terrible, terrible state, I think just highlights the injustice of what she's having to, her ordeal, what she's having to suffer.
This isn't unrelated to the conversation we were having, Kevin, before the break. Labour have been very proud at their general ability to reduce the number of women in prison because they recognise, the fact is, when mums go absent from a family life, the consequences for the children are quite profound sometimes. If you have a dysfunctional mother, it is often good to get them out of the home. But there's no evidence that Lucy Connelly, or a lot of women who've been in prison...
She was a carer. She used to look after other people's kids.
So there are big consequences by their own standards for families of putting someone like Lucy Connelly in prison. But the left lose the plot and all perspective when it comes to race issues. If you contravene their idea of what good race relations mean, they will throw everything at you. There's plenty of other things you can do in life that we used to regard as a society as bad, but society doesn't look at those. But race is the unforgivable sin, and she shouldn't have issued those words. But you're absolutely right. The price she and her family are paying for what she said is out of all proportion. And we know Keir Starmer and the Labour Party are up to their heads in knowing about this case. And I'm very grateful for Richard Tice, grateful for you highlighting this issue, because I hesitate to even mention it, but we don't want to wake up one morning and this story to be an awful lot worse than it is tonight. And Labour, the government, the judicial service should act before it's too late and let that woman home.
I mean, she's going to get out in August as it is, but apparently, it's really taking its toll. Ray, lovely man, he's extremely upset as well. So it's really getting bad, this situation. There was this hope, what was it, a couple of months ago, that she would be on appeal, that her sentence would be reduced, but not reduced even by a second. I think the way Lucy Connelly is being treated, and you're right, the caveat must be that no one condones what she wrote, but for God's sake, think about it. She was I use that sexist term, if you like. She was a housewife, a mum, a middle-class mum.
One of the most important jobs in the world,
exactly.
in my view.
To hundreds of miles away, in a town hundreds of miles away from Southport. She wrote something in haste. She lost her temper. I don't think it had the remotest effect on anything that happened in any of those riots. So the way she's been treated from the sentence until now smacks to me of extreme state cruelty.
Yeah, and if only it was the only example of where the police that, we tear our hair out sometimes, because there was a lady I was hearing on the radio the other day, her sister's house was being broken into, and the police, she rang the police, someone was coming through the door, the police didn't turn up for, guess how long? 24 hours. And
I assume that the culprit had gone by then.
Well, I'd probably, done some other burglaries at the same time. And this is what, gets people angry. It's what gets me angry.
Priorities,
It's, the police should be serving the public and the public interest, rather than some political list of political crimes. And it's our frustration that the police aren't doing the job that we think they should do, and then they're pursuing cases like this expensively,
You just reminded me, Tim, as well. I've forgotten about that appalling moment where Keir Starmer, just after the appeal failed, was asked about this on TV. What about the Lucy Connelly? I'm not familiar with that case. All over the front page of every newspaper, on every television channel and every radio channel, the Prime Minister said he wasn't aware of the case. When he said that, just to reiterate, folks, he was lying. He was lying to the public. He's got to get out of this habit, hasn't he?
Yeah. No,
he's lying penchant.
And today he's saying that the welfare reforms are going to go ahead. It's all going smoothly.
No problem, no rebellion.
Stop treating us like idiots. We can see with our own eyes, and he's just not only lie, he's rubbish at politics.
Yeah, he is rubbish at politics.
We respect people, Nigel Farage, other politicians. People don't always agree with them, but when you know that they're telling you the truth, I don't like that, but I respect that. And Keir Starmer isn't beginning to do that as a Prime Minister.
Absolutely. As I just said to Rod Little, don't you think that this government owes us telling us the position they're standing on Donald Trump? Do we support him or not? They won't tell us.
No.
For Christ's sake, tell us. What is wrong with you people? Unbelievable. Tim Montgomery, another fantastic 30 minutes. We'll be back in just a little while to talk about the situation in...
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back for the next 30 minutes. We're going to be joined by former Conservative Government Special Advisor James Price. In about half an hour, we're going to be taking your calls. But first, let's talk about schools in the West Country. A big welcome to James Price. Hi, James.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Now, I remember from painful experience being sandwiched in between you and Alex Phillips, having to listen to your sort of farm talk and West Country talk. And you're from the West Country, aren't you? Sort of not too far from Swindon. So I thought this was an interesting story. Swindon and Wiltshire pride, this is. Now, primary school pupils in that area are being given lessons thanks to Swindon and Wiltshire Pride, who have delivered leaflets to schools, primary schools. This is 5 to 11-year-olds, giving these kids lessons on 300 different LGBTQ flags and the sexualities and gender identities that these flags represent. So these are little kids being taught that there are more, this is fascinating, this, James, there are more flags for sexuality and gender than there are for the nations of this world. So there are more flags for sexuality and gender than there are for countries, the countries of the world. Parents in that area are pretty understandably furious about these leaflets, which, for example, tell little kids, 5 to 11 years old, all about polyamory people. These are people who basically sleep around with whoever they fancy. That's got a flag. Also, they get all the gen on the trigender flag. These are for people who switch between several genders depending on their mood. 300 flags, lots and lots of lessons teaching these kids that this flag represents this, this flag represents this. Controversially, apparently, the heterosexual flag, for there is one, encompasses trans people. So they're on the heterosexual flag. Now, my point is this education or is this brainwashing? This is, I mean, I've written here, this is pseudo-scientific nonsense. But it's worse than that. That's to say that it's even remotely scientific. It is absolute claptrap being taught to children as if it's an important subject. 300 flags. I mean, this is just hideously wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right. Look, Ev, if I had to listen to you list out too many more of these, I'd have been raising the white flag. It's just absolutely crazy. As you mentioned, I come from this part of the world, and I won't try and do my West Country accent because I know how much it grates you. But
yes, it does. It really. You and Alex Phillips doing your West Country accents. You know, every time you did it, I used to ask for the number for Dignitas, but. Anyway.
but I having been from around here, I also went to state school under a Labour government, and I remember not being taught all kinds of really important things, especially important things about our history. At no point do I remember ever being taught about the Napoleonic Wars. I was never taught about Nelson. I was never actually really taught about Churchill. We learned a bit about Hitler. We seem to learn more about the US civil rights and the communist takeover in Russia than anything else. Learned nothing about Magna Carta. Learned nothing about the English Civil War. Learned nothing about the Glorious Revolution. Things that have, a pretty big bearing on how this world operates and how this country operates, let alone all the really practical stuff about how taxes work and how high they are and all the rest of it. So God knows now what else is being shoved out of the curriculum in order to teach this kind of rot. And as you just said there, this is primary school age children. This is children from 4 to 11. And instead of learning, nice cuddly things about how the seasons change and about how to add your sums up and things like that, you're getting this kind of crap. And of course, the rest of what you're also getting from Labour now are mandatory lessons in how to brush your teeth. And you're getting some children rocking up who don't know how to use the toilet properly. So we've got a real shambles in our education system. And so it seems that the last thing we should be doing is teaching all these different kinds of flags. It's absolutely mental.
Exactly right. I'm just looking up a recent Freedom of Information request revealed that among 250 state secondary schools, fewer than 1 in 5 was teaching the Battle of Agincourt. Only 11% were teaching the battles of Trafalgar and Waterloo, and less than half of them were being taught about the Glorious Revolution. So these are major moments in British history not being taught at British schools. I mean, it's extraordinary to me. I mean, I'm a little older than you, probably about twice your age, but seriously, when I was at school, it was very much British Empire teaching. We got all of this stuff. But I think that, by all means encompass, perhaps the teaching I got was a little bit egocentrically British Empire, imperial and all that. By all means encompass the rest of the world, make it a more broad spectre of knowledge. But you've got to include Trafalgar, you've got to include Waterloo. These are key events. But these events are being expunged, kicked out of the curriculum in favour of learning about 300 different LGBTQ flags. This is, dangerously insane. Why isn't the Education Department doing anything about this? I think I can answer that. The Education Secretary is Britain's top-class warrior, Bridget Phillipson. But seriously, this is dangerous, isn't it? This is not... These kids are not being taught facts. They're being taught sort of, virtue signalling nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely right. Look, you just cited a report there that talked about how many people are not being taught these key facts. And that was actually a report written by Ian Mansfield at Policy Exchange, who worked in the Department for Education with me. And he and I know what it's like when you're in that department. You've got a couple of political people, we were the right-wingers at the time, versus literally thousands. There's about 10 of us versus 8,500 civil servants. And you can imagine how a lot of them got into that work because they want to indoctrinate people. There are plenty of great people in there as well who want to help children and all the rest of it. But as you say, plenty of people who want to indoctrinate children with a worldview like this. The history of the modern world is the history of modern Britain. Or should I say the history of modern Britain is the history of the modern world. The people of this island, through their energies and their ingenuity, forged and crafted the modern world. We were the first people to have the Industrial Revolution, the World Wide Web. We were the people who stood alone against the menace of the Nazis. This is something we should fill children's minds with. Fill them with the best and brightest examples of world history, which happens to be the best and brightest of this. Instead, what happens now, we've just had Windrush Day, which I think was 2 days ago. Now, what happened there was that some people who came here, who were told they were allowed to stay, were then being threatened with being deported because of a bureaucratic mistake, and some folders and files were thrown away. Very bad, scandal, apologise, have them stay, fine. But what we've seen in the last couple of years is a large-scale myth that has been created around this idea of the Windrush generation. Nothing against any of these people, except, of course, that Clement Attlee, the Labour Prime Minister, didn't actually want any of them to come in the first place. But this idea that Keir Starmer said that these were the people who laid the foundations for modern Britain. And that's just not actually borne out by the facts in any way. And so, once again, whether it's the flags of transgender people that you're teaching in primary schools, all these kind of ahistorical narratives, what you're trying to do is foist on the British people things that are just not true and not important, and think that you're going to get away with it. You're not going to get away with it, because the broiling anger and fury at attempts to whitewash our history are starting to spill out into the open. And I hope that Labour see the error of their ways, pull back a lot of this stuff, allow us to be proud of our heritage and our culture and our history. Nothing to do with race or skin colour or anything like that, but our culture and our traditions and our ways of life, and allow us to get on with it rather than trying to push down their increasingly communist jackboot on our heads. I
remember when I was a little kid, it's a long, long time ago, but, You know, when you're a kid, you think two things. Anything you see in print, you think must be true, is 100%. If it's in a book or a newspaper or is printed out anywhere, a leaflet, you think that's true. That's the kid's mentality. The other thing you think is unassailably true is that which your teacher tells you. So your teacher says this, that must be true. Teacher just told me. Now, teachers telling these kids, look at these 300 flags representing different sexualities, different gender identities. This is all unassailably true. This is fact. Digest this information. It will prepare you for life. Well, it's not fact. It's not. It's a sort of crazed propaganda nonsense. It's garbage. And yet it's being taught to young children in their most formative years, 5 to 11. Now, what chance do those kids do they have going forward of being able to make up their minds sensibly about issues? You know, what we're producing here is a bunch of virtue-signalling woke morons who have that's unfair, not morons, ill-informed kids who know nothing else. This is brainwashing. This is serious, and it's got to stop, but I don't know how we do stop it.
Yeah, it does have to stop. I think we'll look back on this as tantamount to child mistreatment, certainly, if not outright abuse. Of course, actually what we've seen for a long time on a lot of the woke stuff is child abuse. You've seen various dodgy charities tell children, yes, you're definitely in the wrong body. Don't tell mum and dad, but we'll send you chest binders if you're a girl and you wear these things to push your breasts down. Yes, don't tell your parents about this, but we'll send you pills in the post that will tell you are reversible if you change your mind, but they're not, and having children be sterilized. Really, truly awful things. And this is another example of this, because these children are going to grow up, not their fault, but without actually not only knowing all this sort of silly nonsense about flags, but not having been taught the essentials of how you can get on in the world. In a world in which Chinese kids study 18 hours every day, and we're sitting learning about the different flags. I don't think they're worrying about the heterosexual/trans flag in Shanghai or Beijing, are they?
The polyamory flag, have I got that right? I can't remember.
Polyamorous, yeah.
Whatever.
Why are we teaching children about these sorts of things? You get to a point where, the ineluctable conclusion for me with a lot of these things, why they're so creepy in the sense that they're going after children more than anything else. Why is it that they want to overly sexualize kids? And some people will remember back in the 1970s, an organization called PI, the Paedophile Information Exchange. And there are still people who try to campaign to make more normal ideas around paedophilia and to make it just another kind of expression of identity. Love is love and all these sorts of things. Well, I think everybody who listening to this will know that that is deeply evil, and we should be very, very suspicious of anybody who whiffs even a little bit of anything like that. I think that organisation still comes back to haunt Harriet Harman in all her nightmares, doesn't it? Harriet Harman, please.
But a lot of the parents in this area are particularly worried, and I completely sympathise with, as you say, with the sexual nature of this. This is sexualizing children who are 5 years old, 6 years old. Tell them, now, polyamory, these are people who, they sleep with anybody, they have sex with anybody, whatever gender, depending on what mood they're on. And then there's these other ones. They have sex just with men, and they have sex with lesbians, and so on and so forth, to 5 and 6 year old kids. So the parents are very worried, quite rightly, about the sexualization of young children. It's something that goes on a lot now. I mean, do you remember Drag Queen Story Time, where schools were letting in drag queens to teach little kids about God knows what? Now, I don't care about drag queens, but they are definitely sexual in their nature and shouldn't be around children, if you ask me. So that was allowed in schools. I'm not sure it is anymore. So the sexualization, that is something to seriously worry about. But what the parents haven't made a song and dance about, and yet they should, is almost worse than the sexualizing of young children, is the teaching of them of complete claptrap, stuff that is not true. stuff that is just part of some kind of recent ideology, a woke ideology. And that's what should be stopped. The passing on of misinformation to children in the form of education at state schools. I mean, the government should step in here and do something, don't you think?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You mentioned Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, earlier. I can barely say her name without breathing smoke and sulphur and fury out my nose.
Agreed.
Ed Miliband and Rachel Reeves get a lot of the criticism, and rightly so, along with David Lammy and some of the other less than optimal people sitting around that cabinet table. But for me, Bridget Phillipson, some people may not even have heard of her, is the most dangerous, the most damaging, the most destructive person that we've had sit around the cabinet table in decades and decades. Because this woman has seen all of the advancements that we have actually made in England, in particular, in Northern Ireland, that have copied us as well, in education. We've gone from being pretty middle of the road to the best in the West, the best we've ever had in terms of schools and teaching things. She's looked at that and gone, nope, I want to get rid of all of that. She is, as you say, a class warrior, and she wants to destroy, as far as I can see, the opportunities of children. And she's going to do that to please the teaching unions so that they back her to replace Keir Starmer. And if you take one thing away from this, it's that Bridget Phillipson, the Labour Education Secretary, will sacrifice your children's future so she can get a better job.
She certainly would. She is, I mean, you often have this game, who's the most dangerous person in the cabinet. It's a difficult game because there are some very dangerous people there. As you say, Ed Miliband, almost certainly Rachel Reeves. I mean, let's not forget the bloody Prime Minister, for God's sake. He's dangerous enough. And then that awful man, the Attorney General, Richard Hermer, who hates Britain with a passion, and so on and so on. All of these people are very dangerous. But I think deep down, I think you're right, that this nasty little class warrior, Bridget Phillipson, may well be the worst. She's the one, of course, who's ruined so many private schools due to the VAT stricture, the new diktat there. And frankly, I think she doesn't like anybody who's not working class. She wants to make their lives more difficult, and if she can ruin their children, she'll do it. I mean, and this nonsense will ruin children. It will ruin them. It will change them for life. They'll believe this stuff is true. That's really worrying.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you talk about being a class warrior. This is a woman who went to Oxford, by the way.
Oh, I know that, yeah.
And has spent 15 years of her life, and she's not an old person, 15 years of her life as a member of parliament, and now she's a Secretary of State. This idea that, oh, poor her, had to struggle for everything. I mean, give it a break, right? Yeah. But what she has done, by the way, as well as destroying all the actual academic stuff and clearly allowing all of this flag woo-woo to be going on, she's also, by the way, pulled all the funding for those kids who are studying Latin in school. Now, that's not a major concern, but she's done that halfway through the year, so it's going to affect all the children's GCSEs from all the state schools. So all the posh kids.
Why?
Because she doesn't want people to be learning Latin, because she thinks that any kid
posh.
wants to go and do that, right? She wants to go and do that. They got ideas above their station, and what they suggested instead was go and do graffiti classes.
Are you? Oh God. Honestly, graffiti. It is evil, and it's also moronic. And dangerous. So I'm going to ask the audience, what do you think about this? I mean, kids being... These are not facts. This is pseudo-scientific, not even pseudo, it's non-scientific wokery gone mad, being taught to our children as fact. 03444991000. When we come back, we'll be talking about Britain's inspirational ambition, the inspirational ambition of this government to try to get off the bottom of the charts when it comes to high energy prices. Our energy prices are the most expensive in the entire world, and now our government is determined to maybe become, I don't know, the second most expensive in the world, or maybe even the fourth most expensive, not be on the bottom of the charts. Unbelievable. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
we're being taken for absolute fools.
Yep.
You know, I've got 4 of these, and I go to work every single day of the week. I get on the tube, I get on the train, and I get through the network and I go to work. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to be a builder anytime soon. I'm also in practice as a chartered accountant for the 4th day of the week, that if I'm not in Parliament, and I'm also the director of the Global Warming Policy Foundation. So I actually hold down 3 sort of jobs. I could do it. For heaven's sake, Britain, get off your backside and do it again.
I just find it extraordinary that you and Labour MPs, 108 of them, apparently don't accept that we've seen a massive explosion in this. We can't afford it. We cannot have, I think it's 1 in 8? 1 in 8 people of working age not working and claiming some of these benefits. The numbers don't add up.
We can't afford to not afford it, Julia. If we're going to do a welfare state, we've got to do a welfare state.
A welfare state should be people who need it, not people who feel anxious on a Monday morning about going to work because it might be raining.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We're still talking to former Conservative Government Special Advisor James Price. Before we get to our next item, James, are you with Zahra Sultana? Because we're all Palestine action now, aren't we? The Labour MP posting just that ahead of her government, her party prescribing Palestine action, I believe, on Thursday. She needs to be kicked out of the parliamentary party, if not the party, for this, doesn't she?
Well, I mean, I think that if she retweets this in a few days, once this organisation has been proscribed, she could go to prison for 14 years. Great, we have a by-election.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought you were going to try and, as a laddie prank, try and convince me to say, yeah, I agree with her, and have myself sent to prison as well.
That was my idea, but somehow I didn't think I'd be able to lure you into that statement. Anyway, to hell with her. She's an idiot. Let's talk about Britain's. They say this government has no ambition for this country, but that's not fair. That funny little guy, the fake solicitor, the pretend solicitor, the business secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, he says the government has this massive, impressive, inspirational ambition, and that is to see if it can lift the UK, lift Britain off the bottom of the charts, and so that we may just hopefully become the country where we no longer have the highest, the most expensive energy bills in the world. So he's saying, well, we can't really compete with America or anything like that, but we do have ambitions to get off the bottom of the charts, maybe become like, I don't know, the 3rd most expensive or the 5th most expensive. If they got rid of Ed Miliband and they got rid of this net zero claptrap and they started fracking, we could actually have as cheap energy prices as America. America's energy prices are 5 times less than ours. And we've got this little pretend solicitor, Reynolds, going, oh, well, we can't compete with them. Well, you could if you didn't have mad energy policies, if you didn't have crazy Ed Miliband sending this country to hell in a handcart, ruining our economy and making our energy prices astronomical. This is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. This is what we have done, not just in energy, but in every aspect, basically, of governing the country. We've tied both of our hands and our legs and everything behind our back so that anyone in the world can come up and kick us where the sun doesn't shine, right? This is what's happening to us. You said about fracking. We've known for a long, long time that fracking's perfectly fine. As you say, in America, it's helped them have very, very, very cheap energy. And America is now the world's biggest energy exporter.
Yeah, we buy a lot of their fracking energy. We buy their fracking gas. It's ridiculous. As long as we don't frack ourselves, it's okay to buy fracked energy. I don't get the logic of that.
No, it's completely crazy. And we've known for about 11 years, and even The Guardian has pointed this out, that it was the Kremlin, it was Russia who was paying for the anti-fracking propaganda. And so not only do we not frack what that we could do here, we also now don't get any of the oil or gas out of the North Sea, of which there is loads and loads, but we do buy it off the Norwegians just next to it. Now, this is absolutely ludicrous. And when you see what's happening in the Middle East, you see just how tense everything could be, how reliant we are on everybody else. This is completely crackers, and we are probably a winter or two away from some rolling blackouts at this stage. That's how serious it's got, and no one will be laughing then.
If we get blackouts, and there's every chance we do, thanks to Ed Miliband, that will be literally a dark day for the government, but also figuratively their darkest day. No government recovers from imposing blackouts on the people. They get fed up. So that could be the end for them. But I know you got to go, but just briefly, what isn't helping our general picture when it comes to energy bills is, of course, Ed Miliband's baffling company, GB Energy. No one knows what the hell it is, but we've just given it £8.3 billion. So there go our bills again, upwards £8.3 billion to GB Energy, a company that has no idea what it is actually supposed to do, and nor does anyone else. It's just off the scale crazy, this, isn't it?
Yeah, it's another bright idea from Ed Miliband, right? This is a person who had to ask why companies needed to pay dividends when he was leading the opposition. It's a man who has absolutely no real-world experience whatsoever. When you ask him where electricity comes from, he says, oh, you probably just flick the switch, right?
Yeah.
And the rest of it.
Honestly. James, excellent to talk to you as always. Always a pleasure. James Price there, former Conservative Government Special Advisor. Let's go to break now. When we come back, let's take some of your calls, shall we? 03444 991 1000. Well, you know what we're talking about. Want to know what you think about the fact the government, our government, Labour government, Keir, Lammy, the gang, won't tell us whether or not they support what Donald Trump did. In other words, send America in with Israel to bomb Iran. Do we support that or do we not? They won't tell us. They won't even tell us whether or not they think that bombing raid was legal or not legal. Why won't they tell us? Don't you think that's an abrogation of governmental duty to not tell the people where you stand? Don't you think this government owes it to us, the people, to tell us where Britain stands? Whose side are we on? Don't you think that they owe us that? 03444 991 1000. Also want to talk about the asylum seeker rape problem. More and more authorities, it seems, trying to keep quiet the fact that asylum seekers are getting arrested and charged with rape and sexual assault. And also, should kids in the West Country be taught about the 300 LGBTQ flags as if they're fact and what they represent? I mean, this is just an ideology. These are not facts, and yet the kids aren't being taught about the Battle of Waterloo or the Battle of Trafalgar, but they're being taught that there are 300 LGBTQ flags, and here's what they represent. 5 to 11-year-olds, primary school kids. First of all, isn't this sexualizing of young children? And secondly, aren't they being brainwashed to absolute pseudo-scientific claptrap as if it's an unassailable truth? Got to be wrong, hasn't it? 03444 991 1000. Let me know what you think. Let's talk. It's good to talk on Talk. We'll be back after this break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. A couple of messages for you. This one is from Philip in South Wales. Listening to Kevin O'Sullivan's programme, thank you. Talking this LGBTQ crap to young children. This is disgraceful. These left-wing woke warriors are seriously dangerous. Joe tweets or texted me to say the reason that we have so many mental health issues amongst our young people is that they don't know what they are. They're given too many choices by the education system and society in general that they don't know what the hell to think anymore. Animal, vegetable, mineral, can of Coke, sycamore tree, postbox. What the hell? No wonder we have so much angst among our young people. I think it's a really good point. I think that the way they're being educated, you know, with all this LGBT stuff, here's 300 flags and they're being taught ideology of its fact. It's confusing to them. They don't know where they stand. I think Joe makes a very good point there. Let's go to the phones and let's talk first to Tristan in Southend on Sea. Hello, Tristan.
Hello, Kevin. Good evening. With your permission, I'd like to make a controversial point at the end of what I'm saying here, please.
Go for it.
In relation to the pride flags, I'm a gay man. I came out in 1992 at a very, very young age. And, you know, it was about equality then. It wasn't about this domination and getting the whole world to
Interesting. Yeah.
We're 3% of the population, and our so-called leaders who do not represent me keep demanding that 97% of the country does everything we ask of them. Now, in relation to the actual sex education side of things, now this is going to get me lynched, but I'm going to say it because someone does need to say it. I think for all children, heterosexual, straight, gay, whatever, there needs to be a new modern version of Section 28 brought in.
That is controversial, Tristan, yeah.
Yeah, it certainly is, but we shouldn't be teaching...
Remind us what Clause 28 was.
Section 28 was, at the time, it was to do with banning the teaching of gay and
That's right, yeah, it was Margaret Thatcher's bête noire, wasn't it, to get rid of it, yeah.
We need to apply it more broadly so that children can't be taught about trans ideology, so that they can't be taught about certain sex acts, and I mean all kids, regardless of sexuality. And furthermore, whatever happens to the most important part of sex being love, relationship.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, no, the thing is, Tristan, I'm kind of with you. I mean, what the problem here is, you know, it depends on the age of the kids. I'm not sure we should be talking to 5 or 6 and 7-year-olds about homosexuality or heterosexuality or any sexuality. I think they might be too young for all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
At a certain age, when we think they're old enough, I don't think there's any problem with sort of teaching them about the sort of sexual panorama. You know, there are gay people, there are heterosexual people, there are lesbian.
I would agree.
Yeah, so you know, not teaching them about the various sexualities at all, I think, is wrong. But the kids of 5 to 11, I think that's too young. And but more to the point, what is worrying in this story we're talking about with the 300 flags is these kids are being taught about these flags. They're 5 to 11 years old, they're primary school kids, as if it's a fact. You know, they're being taught this by their teachers. You know, and what we're talking about with flags, 300 flags, this is ideology. This is just the insignia of ideology. This is not a fact, and yet kids are being taught it as a fact. So, yes, I understand what you're saying. But I don't think there's anything wrong with teaching about sexuality, but you've got to do it sensibly, and this is not sensible.
Yeah, but they don't need to be taught anything that is along the lines of sex as a transaction. That needs to stop.
I think that is a really interesting point, that, you know, no one's talking about love and relationships and marriage and things like that. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, it's an interesting point. How old were you when you came out, Tristan?
I was 12.
12?
Yeah.
That is young.
It was in the very early 90s, it certainly was.
And how did that go? How did that go for you? How did that go for you?
I nearly got expelled from school.
You got well, that's wrong as well.
Yeah, but times have changed, times have moved on, and as I say, it needs to be a modern version that's suitable for these times.
Yeah. But good points there, Tristan. Are really interesting. Yeah, thanks for ringing and look after yourself. Thank you for calling. Tristan in Southend-on-Sea there. Now, let's go to Liverpool. Talk to Paul. Hello, Paul.
Yeah, hi, Kev. Just about the asylum seekers. Kevin, if you were a genuine asylum seeker, you wouldn't throw any papers away. You'd bring as much documentation or pictures or anything to show you from a really bad place.
Such a good point. Such a good point. Yeah. You have to ask yourself. You have to ask yourself why do these? Well, 90% of them, we think, throw their documents, throw their passports into the English Channel.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's more than that. I mean, and they bring nothing. I mean, why don't even the border force people say, okay, let me look at your phone. Let me see who you communicate with and any photographs.
Well, this is the problem. This is the problem, Paul. They don't really get asked any questions at all. They're just oh, you haven't got your passport? Fine, come on in. Don't worry about it. We're just... Go on.
Kev, sorry, they should be, Kev. If you have no documents of anything and you've got no backstory, you can't even say, where did you go to school? What was the school called? What was the village called? Or whatever. You've got none of that. You're not getting in. That should be the rule.
It should be the rule. But as I say, if it was the rule, 90%, something like 90%, of all the migrants that cross the channel illegally could not be let in. But the point is, the attitude we take is, oh yeah, don't worry, oh, we don't know anything about you, come on in.
Do you know what you should do, if you could do it, Kev? Ask genuine asylum seekers who've come over in the last year, maybe 20, 30 years, ask them to phone in. And when they come in genuinely, did they have papers? I will guarantee, Kev, almost all of them will have had papers, backstories and everything, all of them.
Well, yeah, absolutely. As you say, why do they throw their documents away? Why do they throw their passports away?
Because they're dodgy.
Yeah, that's because a lot of them are dodgy. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, Paul, I think it's a very good point. And but however, I keep saying it. Surely we should make it, the one criterion. You don't get into this country if you don't have a passport or if you don't have any documents. But because they know that we don't make a thing of that, they particularly make a point of throwing their passports away because they know that we'll go, oh, fine, don't worry about it, come on in, we know nothing about you, but you can come and live here for as long as you like. I mean, hence, or that, Paul, in a nutshell, is the lunacy of our migration policy. Absolutely mad. Paul, good point. Thank you for calling. Call me again, Paul, in Liverpool. Listen, let me read a couple of messages. This is... we don't have a message. The reason that the Education Department hasn't done anything is because you are lying. This has nothing... I don't know what that means. It doesn't have a name on it anyway. Rachel says, I'm going to put my foot through the TV in a moment. Labour, Lucy Connelly, LGBTQ, crapola rape. And girls, we need this government. I'm not going to repeat what Rachel called the government, but I do agree with her sentiments. We need this government out now. And here's one from Ernie. My father always used to say to me, I can put up with thieves, hooligans and most wrong-uns, but the one thing I can't stand is a liar. Once you know they've lied to you, you can never trust them ever again. It's an interesting point. And Barry says, I'm thinking about applying for a rebate on my TV licence. Good luck with that. Barry says, I think you need to look at the BBC Two broadcast tonight, Day at the Test, and watch what happens with the presenters when they interview great cricketers. Well, OK. Well, let's have a look at that. I'll have to have a look at that. Anyway, let's go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Lucy White. She's a public policy specialist at the Centre for Migration Control. We need to talk about, it's all over the front page of The Sun today, major exclusive on their part, good investigation. One of their reporters posed as an asylum seeker, just arrived in this country, literally said, I've just arrived. And he proved what is going on, and that is that asylum seekers, migrants who cross the channel illegally, they're given a hotel, sometimes within hours. They're on bicycles, working for Deliveroo or Just Eat. So there's a racket going on in terms of food delivery cycles, food delivery firms, and our migrants who are supposed to work for at least a year are working within minutes, apparently. And while we pay for their hotels and their food and give them 50 quid a week benefits, we're paying for all that. None of that costs them any money at all. They're earning 1,000 quid a week. Isn't that special? 03444991000. That next, stay tuned.
I visited the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation base that's distributing aid, one of their 4 bases in Gaza. Gets aid into Gazan civilians without being controlled by Hamas. That's the entire idea of it. Hamas have seized control of almost all the aid that's gone into Gaza up to now. I certainly didn't see any sign whatsoever of the IDF when I was at this base. They're on the periphery. They're maintaining sort of wider scale security. The bases are being secured themselves by the GHF, basically by armed American civilians.
We're being taken for absolute fools.
Yep.
Now, I've got 4 of these, and I go to work every single day of the week. I get on the tube, I get on the train, and I get through the network and I go to work. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to be a builder anytime soon. I'm also in practice as a chartered accountant for the 4th day of the week, that if I'm not in Parliament, and I'm also the director of the Global Warming Policy Foundation. So I actually hold down 3 sort of jobs. I can do it. For heaven's sake, Britain, get off your backside and do it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, welcome back. Yeah, big story in the Sun newspaper today revealing that small boat migrants who aren't supposed to work at all, certainly not for the first years after they get here, are landing £1,000 a week delivery rider jobs within hours of breaking into the UK illegally. So they come across in these boats illegally. We put them in a hotel. We pay for that hotel, 4-star hotel usually. So they got free accommodation. We also give them free food, so all their meals are paid for. And we give them £50 a week welfare money. Anyway, it turns out that a fair few of them are also making about £1,000 a week delivering food, delivery rider jobs. They're earning good money from the likes of Deliveroo and Just Eat. while being housed and fed as asylum seekers at hotels, as I say, at our expense, taxpayers' expense. Well, this is all wrong, isn't it? This was revealed by an undercover Sun reporter posing as a migrant. He was offered a deal within 10 minutes. 10 minutes. And the way they do this is you get legitimate delivery app account holders are allowed to sublet work. So if I have an account and I'm a Deliveroo bike rider, I have my app. I'm allowed to sublet work. I can give the work to a friend. But this is being abused to the extraordinary extent that one group on one app had 20,000 members. So something is going badly wrong here. Let's talk to public policy specialist at the Centre for Migration Control, Lucy White. Yeah, Lucy, this is a very alarming report, isn't it? That these illegal migrants, asylum seekers who arrived here illegally, within minutes of being put in a hotel, are being offered work. They're being offered Deliveroo riding work. £1,000 a week they're making, while we pay for their hotels, we pay for their meals, and we give them 50 quid a week. Something wrong with that picture, isn't there?
Yes. Good evening, Kevin. Absolutely. So the first thing I want to start with, there's many angles that I want to dissect this terrible news. The first angle will be the financial angle. So I've done some research today, and I have calculated that Deliveroo alone could be liable to pay £2.3 billion in fees to the government. That's because every single illegal worker that any company takes on, the company can be fined £60,000 per person. Now, Deliveroo, back in 2022, reported to Parliament that they have 90,000 active riders, okay? And then there is also a rate of, which is also very alarming, I must say, 42% of all delivery riders in the UK have been found to be illegal workers. Now, Reuters uncovered this through a Freedom of Information request 2 years ago. So if you take 42% of those 90,000 riders on Deliveroo and put a 60,000 fine, that's £2.3 billion of fines just for Deliveroo. That's without Just Eat and Uber Eats. Now, what my proposal would be is we are spending £6.4 billion a year on this fake asylum seeker bill. So what I say is let's fine these companies heavy. Let's collect the billions owed to us taxpayers who have been defrauded. Let's use that to clear the bill, the asylum seeker bill, and start reimbursing back our taxpayers.
Well, I mean, it's unclear what punishments may come down on these companies. As I say, we're talking about Deliveroo and Just Eat, among others. And they're saying we have a dedicated team in place who ensure that we do work with riders who don't have that we don't work with riders who do not have the right to work in the UK. We are consistently strengthening our control against misuse of our platform with further measures in development. Well, OK, fair enough. But the Sun reporter, Thomas Godfrey, as I say, he sort of posed as an asylum seeker who'd arrived literally within hours and was offered work. And when he said, well, won't I get caught? And they said... very unlikely, inshallah, as God wills, you're unlikely to be caught. So, whether or not they'll clean their house up is another issue, but they certainly ought to, right?
Well, my concern, Kevin, is that this information that I just mentioned, that was from 2023 in April, that was 2 years ago, and we still have this same issue today. So the issue is Deliveroo and the others will use the facade of this subletting scheme to say, well, we are working with a rider, whoever they sublet to, that's their mistake. But so my recommendation to these companies is, number one, they must instantly immediately ban the ability for anyone to rent or sublet from
Yeah,
them.
exactly right, Liz. That's exactly what I was thinking. Surely, at the very least, there should be a new rule, a new law, that if you work for these companies and you have, your own app, that's it. You're not allowed to sublet work out, because that opens a Pandora's box of all sorts of potential problems, doesn't it?
Exactly. And if you look at the actual Uber app, whenever I order an Uber, I have a photo of the driver and their name. When I order from, say, Deliveroo, which I will now no longer be doing, and I call for the public to boycott these all these delivery food apps immediately, what I would suggest to the companies is they put a Face ID every single time one of these delivery riders opens the app. So, when you're on your iPhone or your Android and you open your banking app, it might have a Face ID. So every single time the riders open their app, they should have a Face ID. And that way, if it's only the registered driver, then these illegal migrant workers would no longer be allowed to access the app. And moreover, I would like to touch upon women's safety, but also anyone's safety, any men, anyone that's using this app. So the issue is, when you're ordering food, it comes directly to your front door, whether that's your home or your apartment inside a building block. These illegal migrant workers have access to your address. They can literally get to your front door, which is startling. So also, with my hat as a spokeswoman for the Women's Safety Initiative, WSI, this is of grave concern. We do not want these unknown, quite frankly, men. I don't think I've ever seen a female rider coming straight to our front doors. This is alarming.
It's a really good point that this is an industry that clearly needs a lot more regulation. This food delivery industry is apparently worth £15 billion every year and employs more than 200,000 self-employed riders. They're kind of self-employed. So we need some rules and regulations here. I mean, I always hate calling for more rules, more regulations. It's against my sort of basic outlook in life. But this is cowboy country, isn't it? This is out of control. It needs to be brought into line.
But what I would also say is, and I've said this multiple times, and I will continue to say it, any illegal migrant entering our country, number one, must be detained and deported. But even if they step foot on our country, just like COVID-19, they must be quarantined and put into lockdown. They must not be given freedom to access our country. Just as COVID-19, if you were thought to have COVID-19, you had to be in lockdown because you were a threat to the public. Quite frankly, all of these illegal migrants are a threat to our public. So I think the grave issue is, why on earth are they put in hotels and granted the freedom to move about in the first place? If they were detained, they wouldn't be able to leave the hotel and go and get an illegal job in the first place.
Yeah, well, you're cutting to the real basics there, Lucy. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's ridiculous, our system. These people turn up illegally, break into our country. We put them into 4-star hotels, give them 50 quid a week, give them free food, free doctors, free dentists, free lawyers, and we don't know anything about them. We don't even ask them any questions. They go, oh, where's your passport? Oh, I lost it. They threw it into the English Channel. But so we've got this vast invasion going on day in, day out. But it gets worse when you learn that clearly a fair few of the young men, because they're mostly young men, one of the very few deterrents is when you get to Britain, you won't be able to work, you won't be able to get a job. So you're coming here in search of economic improvement, economic advancement, because they're not really escaping war, they're just economic migrants. But if we told them that you definitely can't work, and didn't let them take these jobs delivering food, it might be a better situation. But it's very much an enticement for them, I would have thought, if they know the ropes. When you get here, this stupid country will give you 50 quid a week and a free hotel and free food. Also, you can land these jobs that are worth £1,000 a week. It's insanity, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that also brings into question the traceability. So how do they actually withdraw this money? If it's from a registered driver who is subletting it, is it then paid to them in cash? And then what are they doing with this cash? So, for example, I can just imagine that an illegal migrant will take this cash, go to Western Union and send it abroad back home, which is why we need to crack down and get strict on where is this money being sent. We must tax all remittances abroad, and we must crack down on this. I mean, it's literally absurd. Like, these people have a job, they're being paid, but they get to live rent-free in central London with an allowance and with free food. Now, I don't know anyone that gets free rent plus a living salary cost plus free food and benefits. It's absolutely absurd. And anyone that tries to defend this also needs to go back to the circus, because they are an absolute clown.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Sun reveals that this is going on all over the country, including London, Bournemouth, Manchester, where they took lots of pictures of migrants in branded jackets for Deliveroo, Just Eat, Uber Eats and all the others. Some were riding £1,000 e-bikes, while others used public hire bicycles. So we've got a real problem here, and let's hope we begin to sort it out. But knowing our migrant crisis, Lucy, it's pretty damned unlikely. Thank you so much. Good to talk to you as always. Lucy White there, Public Policy Specialist for the Centre for Migration Control. What do you think about this? All over the country, these migrants coming in, they're not supposed to work. They're clearly getting these food delivery riding jobs and apparently earning £1,000 a week. And they're getting these jobs within hours of arriving. This is just getting worse and worse and worse, isn't it? When we come back, it's all going on in the Middle East, as you know. We'll be debating the chances for this ceasefire, what's going on and what lies ahead. So stay tuned for that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We need to talk about the Middle East. This time last night we were on a knife edge because we thought that it was about to escalate alarmingly after Iran fired missiles at a American base in Qatar, but it turned out to be rather kind of performative, really. The word being that Trump had said, all right, you can fire these missiles as long as you miss, and then moving on the basis that there would be, after this, a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Now, after some fury from the president and various confusing orders, it looks like some kind of ceasefire has been established. The president, before we go over, we're going to talk to, if you like, a couple of voices on both sides of the argument, Israel's argument and Iran's argument. But before we do this, let's have a look at Donald Trump losing his temper, to be honest with you, because he had called for a ceasefire after this attack on the Qatari American airbase last night, and then Iran, sure as night followed day, fired a ballistic missile at Israel today, and Israel said it was going to respond. Was apparently on its way flying aircraft to Iran to respond, and the president basically said they don't know what the F they are doing, and he called the planes, he ordered the Israeli planes to come back, and that seems to be the uneasy situation at the moment. Nobody's firing missiles at anyone, which is new after the past week or so. But I would say that the peace, if you like, is fragile. Let's have a quick look at Donald Trump quite clearly losing his temper with both Israel and Iran.
You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Do you ever fight in Iraq?
I guess we do understand that. Well, a warm welcome to the show. He's in Tel Aviv at the moment, so it'll be interesting to get his take on what's going on. Friend of the show, Jonathan Sakadoty, journalist over there. Also, journalist and author, activist Yvonne Ridley. Welcome, Jonathan. Welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you.
Good to be with you. Right. Well, first off, Jonathan, you're over there in Israel. You're in Tel Aviv at the moment. The ceasefire is holding. What is your optimism here? I mean, the president seems to be taking the view that he's in charge and he's ordering Israel what to do, and indeed Iran. Iran sort of didn't really take his orders last night. They this morning they fired a ballistic missile at Israel. He seemed to lose his temper and apparently called some planes back that were on their way to Iran, and they've come back to Israel. So the ceasefire, I mean, do you hold out many hopes for it? Where are we at right now?
So far the ceasefire does seem to be holding, and both sides do seem to have withdrawn from the military activities. So Israel had been conducting strikes in the Islamic Republic of Iran, taking out nuclear facilities, ballistic missile stores, rocket launchers, and even ballistic missile storage areas and factories. And that's because all of those were, for many years, used or threatened to be used against Israel. And indeed, the Islamic Republic of Iran even had a countdown clock in a public square counting down to the eventual eradication, as they hoped, of the State of Israel. They also bombed that, we heard. So I think that has stopped, as far as we know, and we heard Trump very powerfully saying that had to stop, even when the Islamic Republic broke the ceasefire almost as soon as it was coming into effect. You know, they launched more of those ballistic missiles almost immediately that it came into effect. Israel said it was going to react, and Trump did stop them. So I'm hoping that we'll have a night tonight without being woken up by those alerts that we've had pretty much every night over the last 12 days, because the regime in the Islamic Republic has been literally targeting civilians every single night and during the day as well, sending people into bomb shelters. And of course, tragically, 28 people have been killed as well as a result of their actions.
Of course, a lot of people have been killed in Iran as well. Yvonne, thanks for joining us. Do you think that Israel and indeed America, was Donald Trump right to join Israel in the targeting of those nuclear facilities in Iran?
No, I think that the moment America did that, it no longer could be regarded as an honest peace broker in the Middle East. And what was really interesting about this was the first time ever Israel had asked America to fight alongside it and for it. This was something that was really interesting, an admission, if you like, from Israel that they couldn't do this alone and that they needed the military might of the USA to carry out this bombing campaign.
Do you believe, though, that, I mean, the reason for that bilateral action, that joint action, was fears on the part of America and Israel, and indeed other Western countries, that Iran posed a threat to the rest of the world, to the West, because they were building up nuclear weapons. Do you accept that Iran was posing a threat?
No, I don't. In fact, the rhetoric throughout this has taken me right back to 1996, when a much younger Benjamin Netanyahu told the world, we've got to stop Iran. They are weeks away from producing a nuclear weapon. And he has kept up this rhetoric non-stop. Weeks away, days away, we're on the brink, we're all in danger. And of course, it's all been a fabrication. And we still don't know if their nuclear program has been damaged. Apparently, there's some enriched plutonium kicking around, and your fellow guest is laughing here, and it is a bit farcical. There's some
laughing because on the one hand you say that it's all manufactured and made up.
One second, Jonathan. Hang on, Jonathan. Let Yvonne finish, then I'll come to you. Sorry.
Right.
And there's your dog. Okay, Jonathan, what were you going to say?
Well, listen, Yvonne, I don't know her personally, but I'm aware of her from her work on the Islamic Republic of Iran's propaganda station Press TV in the past. So I'm not surprised that she might have lines that seem to be propaganda for that tyrannical theocratic regime. Indeed, she herself just said that she suspects there is secret nuclear material lying around that Israel and America didn't manage to strike. But at the same time, she said it was manufactured by Benjamin Netanyahu, that there was a nuclear threat at all. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu has been warning about that nuclear threat for a long time. And indeed, Israel's been taking clandestine action for many years, including seizing a vast amount of material that showed the exact plans and the way they've been carrying them out in the Islamic Republic of Iran. So they had been also carrying out covert actions within Iran over the years. So they have been setting back those nuclear plans, those nuclear weapon plans for many years. And I think that the idea that they couldn't have handled this without the US is definitely one that's worth thinking about, because the bunker buster bombs that the US did bring in to play in this last action were important. But Israel had in fact said that it had plans, if they weren't able to rely on that, to even carry out some sort of daring activity where they might send in troops on the ground, drop people in to go inside Fordo, inside that deep mountainous underground facility where, again, the theocratic Islamic regime had been deliberately hiding the nuclear material and development so that they would be able to use it against the state of Israel. And remember that that regime has an ideology of 12 Shiite Islam, which believes that Armageddon basically will come and a hidden imam will reappear at that point of chaos on earth, which is one of the reasons why them having a nuclear weapon is so terrifying, combined with the fact that they already have tried to surround Israel with enemies such as Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, all of whom have been attacking Israel for years, especially over the last 21 months or so. And those people are all sponsored, trained, financed and armed by that very state that was also trying to develop nuclear weapons. So altogether, I think Israel has carried out quite a spectacular military action in taking out most of that threat that they could. And then the US came in at the end to help out with that, because of course that regime poses a threat to the West, it poses a threat to the US. I mean, the British intelligence services have revealed that they foiled numerous plots to kill people on British soil by the Iranian regime. It's not my word you have to take for it, or Benjamin Netanyahu's. It's just what you'll find out if you're a clear-headed, even-handed journalist who's looking at the evidence and the things that the Western powers have said over the years.
Okay, Yvonne, regime change. Netanyahu says he wants it. I think Donald Trump is quite kind of diffident about it. He said yesterday to Starmer, apparently, well, why not, kind of thing. So he's sort of on the fence. And I think Britain and many Western countries they're not quite sure what they want in terms of regime change, because if the Ayatollah and his current regime fall, the worry would be what happens next into, what pours into that vacuum. That said, do you think regime change, should this battering that Iran has been receiving from Israel and now America as well, result in the fall of this Ayatollah and his regime, do you think that would be a good thing for Iran?
Well, you just have to look at Iraq to see what regime change does, and it causes chaos. And, as a journalist...
Do you think this... sorry to interrupt, but do you think Ayatollah Khamenei is a good guy? Do you think he's good for Iran, or do you think it might be good if he was gone?
Well, it's not really up to me. I live
I'm asking you, though.
It's really up to the Iranian people to decide. And this is something that the West constantly does when it blunders in and says, oh, let's have regime change. They did it back in 1953 without consulting the people. And now they're pushing this man who's a leftover from the Peacock throne dynasty, who can't even address his own people in Farsi. He's having to talk to them in English. Well, the majority of Iranians don't speak English.
Well, 70% of them don't like this guy. 70% of them don't like this guy. They don't like his regime. So you must take a view on whether or not you think it might be better if this old 86-year-old guy who's been there since 1989 took the fall and went. Don't you think that if he goes, that would be good for Iran? You must have a view on that.
Well, as I say, I really don't. I just think that regime change pushed by the West has never produced a great leader, not one that I can think of. Maybe your other guest will, but I can't think of any country that has benefited from regime change. And America and Britain are not nation builders. The Iranian people are quite a different kettle of fish to most of the people in the region. And I don't, I would trust them to make their own judgment about who should come next. But we heard about religious fanaticism and the 12 imams and all of this. Well, if we're going to go down the religious route, Ayatollah Khamenei issued a fatwa many, many years ago, which is a religious ruling saying nuclear weapons were evil and Iran would never develop them.
Yeah, and you can always trust these guys, can't you, these Ayatollahs?
Well, that fatwa has not been overturned.
Okay.
It hasn't been changed, it hasn't been overturned, and it would be easy enough to do so if you're the supreme leader of Iran. So, as I say, I keep looking back at the craziness over the WMD in Iraq.
Yeah. I take that point, Yvonne, that what we were left with after the fall of Iraq was this kind of mosaic of chaos, and the same thing could happen in Iran. Let me ask you, Jonathan, you might take a more strident view on this, I think. Do you think Iran would be better off without this sclerotic old 86-year-old dinosaur who's turned that country into a kind of religious tyranny? Do you think Iran would be better off?
I do think it's weird that Yvonne, who is a convert to Islam, finds it so difficult to criticise a tyrannical dictator in the Islamic Republic of Iran, when the people of Iran had this Islamic regime thrust upon them. And as you say, the vast majority of them absolutely loathe it, not just because of religion being imposed on them or a counterculture against their very own ancient Persian culture, but also because it tortures them, it imprisons dissidents, it kills people, it kidnaps dual citizens. I mean, we have currently got British people who are being held prisoner in that country by that regime on bogus charges because they dared to go in there on a motorbike trip as tourists. We had Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, who was a British-Iranian dual national, kept prisoner there and held ransom, basically. People are frequently tortured and killed there by that very regime. So it is peculiar not to say that it would probably be good if the Ayatollahs were no longer in charge of the Islamic Republic of Iran. In fact, if it was no longer the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, I won't disagree that sometimes regime change can lead to something worse or lead to chaos. And indeed, that's why Israel and the United States haven't actually pushed here to bring down the regime. I think they probably could have done. And I think that most experts I've spoken to out here who know that culture and the politics of that region very well have said that really probably the best thing would be if the Iranian people are able to rise up against that dictatorship, against that tyranny, and if they were able to bring it down, because that, of course, would be their choice. So Israel's responsibility here has not been to try and bring down the regime, though it may be helping to weaken that regime and show the people of Iran that that's a possibility for them. Its job is to stop them being the new Nazis that they are. You know, they frequently deny the Holocaust whilst plotting to carry out a new one and promising to do so. They were trying to build nuclear weapons to be able to do that. Of course, Iran thinks a fatwa lying about it meant that they wouldn't do it, but they would. The IAEA has said they had enough material that they were close. The US intelligence, the Israeli intelligence has all suggested that they're close. There's no useful civilian purpose for the enriched uranium that they were making themselves in their centrifuges. There's literally, I think, no chance that they were just doing some sort of innocent civilian nuclear program. And I think that's why Israel and the US did act in this most extraordinary and coordinated of ways. And I think we have them to thank for saving the world from what is effectively the nuclearization of the worst state sponsor of terrorism around the world, not just to its own people, not just to Israel and the Jewish people, but to people in the West. They call America the great Satan and they call Israel the little Satan. There is no doubt about it that a great favor has been done to the world, and yet the regime is still there because they weren't brought down and they are still dangerous. They still lie, they still stall for time, they still see things in apocalyptic grand visions that go over centuries and generations, so they probably will not give up until they are brought down by the brave Iranian people themselves. And so we must be very careful to note that Israel and America are taking out the direct threats to those of us in the free world. They're not necessarily trying to impose a new regime there, but a new regime there, if carried out well, if it was a solid and reliable opposition to that, and that's a big if, would definitely be something that the Iranian people would probably appreciate.
Yvonne, would you accept that Iran has malevolent intent towards the West?
I have never seen it, and I've extensively travelled Iran.
What about the ticking time clock in the middle of the square in the middle of Tehran, countdown to the annihilation of Israel? You don't think that's slightly malevolent?
You know, we've had a lot of rhetoric, haven't we?
Well, that's a fact. It's there.
Netanyahu crying from the river to the sea in the UN just last year. We have all of this rhetoric going on with some very poor quality leaders from Washington, Tel Aviv, and elsewhere. And I really don't want Jonathan lecturing me about human rights when there are 12-year-olds imprisoned in Israel who are being tortured and raped. And just a few weeks ago,
literally sent children into minefields to clear them. That regime sent children into minefields to clear them, and that's who you're standing up for and who you worked for in the state television station of that regime.
Iranians, Jonathan. I'm asking you, and you're sitting there and you're saying absolutely nothing about the nuclear warheads that Israel has, that Israel refuses to let the world to see. In fact, I would say, one of the biggest threats in the world today isn't in Tehran, it's in Tel Aviv.
Of course you would, because you work for Press TV, which is the propaganda station of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Of course you would say that. You're famous
as a
for
journalist
that.
can't even report on it, otherwise you'd be locked up as well, and then you'd be able to see the atrocities that are being meted out in the prisons in
So you've got
Israel.
nothing bad to say about the Islamic Republic of Iran. You're more scared of the democracy of Israel that has never threatened to eradicate another country, has never threatened nuclear annihilation of anyone.
What democracy? It's an apartheid state. We saw.
In what way is it an apartheid state?
Filipinos and Thai people.
So Iran is your model of good leadership and governance. Of equal rights, Iran, where they force homosexuals to have sex change operations, where they kill people, the death penalty for homosexuality. Come off it, Yvonne. I know that you had this weird conversion to Islam after you were a hostage, and I know that you worked for the Islamic Republic TV station. But come on, you're a sensible woman. You must be able to hear that what you're saying doesn't fool anybody watching this channel.
Well, I'm focusing on nuclear weapons, and you very quickly.
No, you're not. You're saying that there's a fatwa that says there won't be any. You're not focusing on nuclear weapons.
And you talk about a democracy.
You're denying Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran's plans to develop nuclear weapons to wipe out Jews in Israel. That's what you're doing. You're not focusing on them.
Why aren't journalists allowed to report on the ground what is happening in Tel Aviv? The German media are going mad. They can't film.
Well, actually, Jonathan's in Tel Aviv.
People showing where the ballistic missiles aimed at civilians landed. It's because they were trying to stop the psychopathic regime you're now trying to defend, understanding exactly where they'd managed to blow up civilians and kill them. That's why they didn't want them reporting the exact sites of the landing of the ballistic hypersonic missiles that Iran launched. Come off it. Do you think people are stupid? Do you think people are swallowing what you're feeding them? You just sound ridiculous.
Well, I hope the Israeli people are stupid, because if they know about the Holocaust that is going on in Gaza, then I would be really shocked.
You want to teach Jews about the Holocaust, do you, Yvonne? You want to teach Jews about the Holocaust? That's very good of you. I've never heard you talk about the Holocaust before. What is your position on the Holocaust and Iran's denial of the Holocaust, the Islamic Republic's denial of the Holocaust, its holding of regular Holocaust denial cartoon competitions, of it saying that it wants to eradicate the only Jewish state in the world? You want to tell Israelis about the Holocaust? You want to tell me, the son of a Holocaust survivor, about the Holocaust? Let's hear it.
I listened to Professor Norman Finkelstein, who was actually in the Holocaust.
Oh, Norman Finkelstein, yeah.
Yes.
He was in the Holocaust, Norman Finkelstein.
You know, I am not a Holocaust denier. Absolutely not. As a child, I was brought up on the horrific images. You can clap your hands like that, you know.
I'm pleased you're not a Holocaust denier. That's good to hear.
Tears.
But, good baseline.
How Israel has managed to fritter away all the goodwill that it had through the Holocaust is beyond me, but you have.
Much of the Arab world is enormously grateful for what Israel and the US have just done in taking out an enormous amount of the threat from the Islamic Republic of Iran, whose TV station you work for.
Babies skeletal, images that I saw as a child in documentaries on Belsen and Auschwitz, I am now seeing in Gaza. Shame on you, Jonathan. Really, you disgust me.
Jonathan? Well, listen, you two, thank you very much. An extremely spirited discussion, I'm sure you'll agree. Passionate viewpoints given there. That's Jonathan Sakadotti, journalist, writes for The Spectator, who's over in Tel Aviv at the moment. He's based in London, though. And also Yvonne Ridley, journalist and author, obviously a Muslim convert, and sort of fighting Iran's corner there. I'm not saying anything. What do you think? 03444991000. When we come back, we'll be taking your calls. I'll read some of your messages, and I think we'll have a few WhatsApp voice notes. Who knows? That next. Stay tuned.
you can't try and snipe at the Conservatives for things that weren't our fault.
Oh, I mean, I
This
haven't
is
got
not one.
time. Don't tell your big mate Donald Trump to tell his big mate Vladimir Putin to stop killing people. Then we can solve that problem like that.
Won't be surprised to know I disagree.
Why? Why do you disagree, though? Why do you want our young people left on the scrap heap? The court...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
In a minute, we will be talking to Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Now, this morning, he visited Lucy Connelly at Peterborough Prison, where she's being held for 2 years and 7 months. You all know about that. She was sentenced to that hefty term behind bars because she wrote some nasty, hurty words on Twitter. Now, you know, we don't condone what she wrote. It wasn't very nice, but 2 years and 7 months. I don't think she should have even gone to jail, let alone 2 years and 7 months. Ridiculous. Richard Tice visited her this morning, and he says that she's in a terrible way because she's been mistreated. That she's got bruises, she's been handcuffed, she was restrained because she was about to be moved to a, shall we say, a more pleasant wing with full privileges, and then at the last moment she was told that she would not be moved and would instead be placed in a 23-hour-a-day lockdown in the area holding the most violent prisoners, which she most certainly is not, obviously. This woman is no threat to society whatsoever. Anyway, when she challenged the move, she was allegedly restrained by officers with handcuffs and forcibly moved to her new cell. Richard visited this morning, and he says that she's being treated in a way that makes it look, at least, as if she is Sir Keir Starmer's political prisoner. He said she was mistreated, no question about it, in the hours after her removal to the new wing. She was starved, not given lunch or dinner, no food. Richard Tice joins us on the phone now. Richard, thanks. How are you?
Well, I am fine, thank you, but it's been quite an interesting day, to say the least, visiting Lucy Connelly in prison. And on one sense, you know, credit where credit's due. Until last week, actually she'd been treated well, with professionalism, and really no complaints at all. By all accounts, she'd been a model prisoner. But then something changed, it seems, and despite being promised to go on to a wing where essentially with extra privileges for good behaviour, all of a sudden that was diverted. She was told she was going to a different wing with very different inmates, with a reputation for violence and for drugs, and all of a sudden, with no notice, and bearing in mind there were sort of three levels of the way procedures that prison officers move prisoners within the prison. There's sort of light touch, there's medium, and then there's heavy-handed. All of a sudden, 6 or 7 officers literally just jumped on her, pushed her to the ground, manhandled her, arms behind the back, very tight handcuffs indeed, and literally dragged her in that position, what they call where you're sort of bent double, you're bent over, dragged her up 3 flights of stairs to this new wing. And for a few days, she was essentially put in sort of a version of solitary confinement. And the whole thing completely inexplicable, very shocking for her, and totally different to the experience she'd had before.
Starved, handcuffed, not given lunch or dinner, no food.
That's the rub of it. And I just want to emphasise, this has not been the norm. This was and that's why she was so shocked, really, that this just came from nowhere. And you then say, well, is it just a couple of wrong-uns within a team, within a big organisation, or is there something more sinister? And it's the latter that I'm basically putting out on notice, that I worry that she is a political prisoner, and I worry that that there may be some, and it's I think an educated guess, there may be some who would quite like to provoke a reaction from her, so that they could say, oh, actually, look, there she is a violent person after all, which she's clearly not, based on her track record. Yeah. And then, I've put it out there, and I will say it live on air. It's not beyond the wit of man that in a wing that has a reputation for lots of drugs brought in by the likes of drones and things, it's not beyond the wit of man that all of a sudden someone plants some drugs in her cell and they happen to get discovered, and therefore she gets she doesn't get the earlier release than she otherwise might. So I'm just putting it out there so that people know. And some people will attack me for being, conspiracy theorist, but frankly, I don't care. Well, she should not be in prison, and I just want to put it out there.
And the thing is, Richard, the backstory feeds into this, which is that Lucy Connelly has never been regarded as a threat to society per se. She's not a violent woman. She's never had an offence before in her life, not so much as a speeding ticket before she wrote these rather silly words on Twitter and got 2 years and 7 months. Absolutely absurdly, grotesquely severe sentence for what she did. Now, the point is that a prisoner like her, normally, because she's a mother, she's got a 12-year-old daughter, the normal system is once every few weeks on a Saturday, they'll be let out to spend the day with their child, motherhood prevailing, as it were. Now, Lucy Connelly, despite the pleas from her husband and her legal team, has never been afforded that privilege. She's always been denied being let out to see her daughter.
You can be a mugger. Yeah, you can be a mugger. You can be a thief. You can be a prisoner of significant violence, but be granted, compassionate leave in the way that you've described. Nothing for Lucy at all in that regard. And I just think this is completely wrong. So we're just calling this out and putting it out there that we expect this to be, we expect Lucy to be freed very soon. So that's what I did. I did then just also, Kevin, I met the head of security because all the prison officers have body cam footage that are triggered when there's a commotion. So there is going to be a review. The head of security has promised Lucy that. He promised me this morning when I met him and spoke to him that they would look at the body cam footage, and let's be hopeful that all the batteries in all the 5 or 6 body cameras that they all work, and there's probably some overhead footage. So let's see what that transpires, what that evidence shows. It's all there, and it's pretty serious, and that's why I've got a 10-minute rule bill in the House of Commons tomorrow, what I'm calling Lucy's Law.
Well, good. So you Ray, her husband, a Tory councillor in Northampton, he's a kind of friend of the show. He's been on a couple of times, and I suppose I shouldn't really say. Well, I'm going to say this. I know he's extremely upset about what has happened. Normally, he'd have come on to this show. But he told us he's just too upset about what's going on with Lucy. In the past, he has told her, or has told us, that Lucy has kind of been bearing up, but he's also told us that she never gets any privileges, and when she asks why, prison officers have said to her, well, you're Lucy Connelly. So in other words, your contention that there's a political prisoner element to this, I think has got a lot of veracity to it. She is being treated...
Yeah, and it's worse than that. She's actually, in the last week, she's had privileges taken away from her, which just is wrong. But I found Lucy to be resilient, and whilst very shocked, and I saw the bruises that 5 days on still significantly discolour her wrists, but I found her also determined to remain calm, determined not to be provoked. And so I just reiterated to her the importance of that, and just to keep have eyes in the back of your head.
As far as I understand, the optimistic forecast is she could be out of jail in August, and I'm presuming they were fixing to move her to this privileged wing. Because she's soon for release, but that hasn't happened. As a person, Richard, you've met her for the first time. Tell us what you thought of her.
She was, as I say, very articulate, very determined, very knowledgeable about the functioning of prisons. I mean, frankly, she could probably write a book on it. And very complimentary about, much of what goes on. This is one of those sort of privatised prisons, sort of, I think it's PFI type thing, probably built 15, 20 years ago. And it was smart. It was what I saw was clean, well organised. The staff were very courteous and organised and professional from everything I saw. And I found her, but I did find her, as I say, whilst being shocked by what had happened because it was so out of the ordinary of what she'd previously experienced. She was full of intelligent analysis about the situation, what works well in prisons, what doesn't work well, the difference between privatised prisons and those that are owned and run by the government. We had a discussion about that. So, yeah, she's very thoughtful.
Did you like her? Did you like her?
I did indeed, yes. As it was the first time I met her, we had a really good chat for an hour, and I learned from it. I learned a lot, but also in a sense, I was saddened most of all by what's happened to her overall, because she shouldn't be there, and then I was saddened by what's happened to her over the last week, and yeah, that's the reality of it.
Richard, listen, I know you've got to do, so we'll look forward to your appearance in the Commons tomorrow, and thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Great pleasure.
That's Richard Tice there, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, who, as you just heard, visited Lucy Connelly in prison this morning, only to learn she's been involved in this awful altercation. They were going to move her to a nice wing, a privileged wing, because she's supposed to come out in August. So they tend to do that with prisoners towards the end of their sentence. They put them in the nicer bits as they wind down. And suddenly, no, we're actually going to put you in the worst wing, where all the drug dealers and the violent prisoners are. There's been some kind of altercation. She's ended up six wardens, prison officers, with her on the floor, handcuffed. Richard said she's still bruised. My God, what is going on? What is going on with this woman? Just let her out. This is getting ridiculous. Let me know what you think about that. 03444991000. We better go to break now. When we come back, we'll take your calls and we'll read your messages. So stay where you are.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Shocking call there with Richard Tice, Reform UK's deputy leader, who has visited Lucy Connelly in jail today to find that she's been through this terrible ordeal. About to be moved to a privileged wing because it was towards the end of her sentence. Instead, she's suddenly beset by, allegedly, 6 prison wardens, prison officers, and moved to a wing where all the drug dealers and the violent people are. So she's gone from going to a nice wing to a terrible wing. And apparently she's handcuffed, she's got bruises on her wrists, and she seems quite sanguine about it, but we know that her husband, Ray, is absolutely traumatised by this. When will this ordeal end for these poor people? No one's condoning what she wrote, but for God's sake, come on, leave her alone. And Richard Tice says that he fears she's she's a Keir Starmer political prisoner, that this government, that Keir Starmer's still trying to make a point out of her. You know, don't give that woman any good treatment, because we have to send a message to the people of this country that if you send nasty messages during a riot in Southport, then you're going to get banged up and you'll get no privileges. That she is being treated like a political prisoner, no privileges, never allowed home to see her daughter, where most prisoners, female prisoners, mothers in her circumstances would be. So let me know what you think about that. 03444 99 1000. WhatsApp voice notes. First, Jack on Labour.
Evening, Kev. Starmer and his government are starting to really give me the feels of Robin Hood. You know, Prince John and the Sheriff of Nottingham, you know, the Chancellor, and locking up the good people of the country while all the criminals get to do what they want.
Yeah, except Robin Hood robbed from the bad and gave to the good, didn't he? Well, it looks like this government sort of does the opposite, takes all of the private sector's tax money and gives it to the public sector. Here's Dean on Labour again.
Hi, Kevin. So Starmer wants us all on a war footing, does he? Well, Starmer, Lammy, the loony left, and all the soldiers in hotels can go and fight the wars. He broke the contract with the working people. So good luck to him, but won't be getting any working people from Birmingham jumping on the bandwagon to help him. So I think he's on his own, Kev.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dean. Or anywhere else, I think you'll find. Right, let's go to the phones. It's Georgina time. Georgina from London. Hi, Georgina. What do you think about Lucy Connelly?
Well, good evening,
Hi.
Kevin. I first of all, I want to say that Richard Tice is an absolute angel for going to see this young lady, Lucy Connelly. And the fact that Lucy Connelly is still in prison is absolutely disgusting. Whilst Mickey Jones, a Labour councillor, called for the cutting and slitting of throats of Nazi fascists. And by the way, that was us. You know, this is us he's talking about, and he's still walking free. He actually said all this on the 7th of August last year, and by the way, his trial has been put back again now till the 11th of August this year. So you explain that.
Yeah,
one to me,
but then again, it's sub judice, so we don't know whether or not he's guilty. We've got to wait until the trial happens.
Well,
yeah,
I'm
we
just
do,
saying,
Georgina, we really do. So that guy, you know, we can't go around calling him guilty when he hasn't been tried yet.
I am not going to say any more on that, but I'm going to say if this isn't an incitement of violence, I don't know what is.
Well, what I'm worried about here, Georgina, is that, as Richard was indicating, there seems to be a possibility that Lucy Connelly is being treated like a kind of political prisoner, a political prisoner.
Political.
She's being deprived of privileges. You know, it's just not right, I think.
Listen, what's happened has confirmed to me that Lucy is a political prisoner, apart from anything else. If her husband had not been a Conservative councillor, if he'd have been a Labour councillor...
I think it's an interesting factor, yeah, I do.
She wouldn't have even been incarcerated in my book. You know, Lucy Connelly hasn't even been allowed to see her child This is highly irregular.
It is. It's unusual. A mother in her position would normally, about once a month, I'm led to believe, of a Saturday, be allowed out for a limited amount of time to see their child. She has never been given that privilege. Even Kemi Badenoch has stepped in and said this is all wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, she's no threat whatsoever to the general public. She's being made an example of by this government, Kevin. And to be honest with you, she wrote a really nasty thing. It was out of order.
No, yeah, I know. Well, we've taken that on board, but the punishment should fit the crime, and her punishment does not fit the crime. It's a grotesquely disproportionate sentence she's serving.
I was going to say to you is, that girl wrote what the majority of mummies felt at the time when those babies were slaughtered by the son of immigrants. I've got to say it because we were all thinking it. We didn't write it, Kevin, but we were all thinking it. And it was a total...
She lost her temper, you're right. She lost her temper. She was a mother. She lost her own son due to NHS mistakes, apparently, a year before. And she was empathising with those poor mothers whose daughters were slaughtered in that dance, or the 3 poor little kids who were killed by that monster. She was empathising. She lost her temper. She wrote something that wasn't wise, that cannot be condoned. But should she be in prison for 2 years and 7 months? Should she still be there? Should she be banned from seeing her daughter? Should she be stopped from going to the privileged wing all of a sudden at the last moment? No, none of this should be happening to her. It's all wrong, I think, Georgina.
Well, I think if Keir Starmer has an ounce of common decency in his body, he will release that young woman immediately. Starmer's sending a message out to the British public. And let me tell you, Kevin, it's a message that's saying he doesn't care about the people in the UK.
Yeah. Well, don't forget, Georgina.
Very wrong.
Yeah, don't forget, Georgina, when he was interviewed on television just after Lucy failed in her appeal to get her sentence reduced, the Prime Minister pretended he didn't know about that case, which was
that was a blatant lie.
It was a lie.
Kevin.
It was just a terrible lie.
Blatant lie again.
Yeah. I agree. An absolute lie and a disgrace. Georgina, got to move on, but always good to talk to you. Thank you very much, Georgina in London there, I think, talking, voicing the sentiments that a lot of people are feeling about the treatment of Lucy Connelly. Let's go to break. When we come back, more of your calls. Stay tuned.
If you look at Iran, they probably welcome the chance to have a breather. They are on the ropes at the moment and therefore would welcome some sort of ceasefire. But why would Israel agree? They've got their foot on the throat of Iran. They were pummeling away at their missile capability and the nuclear capability. So why did they agree to stop? And I was just wondering whether this was pressure brought by President Trump to be seen as the peacemaker, but an uneasy truce. And as soon as anything happened, it looks like Israel's decided to start up again.
You can't try and
snipe at the Conservatives for things that weren't our fault.
Oh, I mean, I
This
haven't
is
got
not one.
time. Don't tell your big mate Donald Trump to tell his big mate Vladimir Putin to stop killing people. Then we can solve that problem like that.
Won't be surprised to know I disagree.
Why do you disagree, though? Why do you want our young people left on the scrap heap? The court's time being wasted, laying down a ruling on what is a woman. You and I have been speaking for far too many years about
And
this.
actually, you know, I'm very grateful to you too, because you have always covered this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Quick WhatsApp voice note. This is from Carl on Lucy Connelly.
Hi, Kevin. About Lucy Connelly. Absolutely disgusting. Political prisoner, definitely. Keir Starmer, don't trust him one bit. He says he doesn't know anything about her case. Absolute rubbish. I don't think she will be allowed out in August. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't trust the establishment one bit. And I think they'll be terrified of her coming out and they'll want to silence her before she can come out. Let's wait and see.
Well, Carl, thank you for a good WhatsApp voice note. It's certainly confusing what happened to Richard. What Richard was talking about. I mean, why is she being descended on by 6 prison officers, handcuffed, bruised around her hands because she was going to be moved to a rather nice ward, a privileged wing, and was at the last moment told, no, you're going to a really horrible wing where all the violent drug addicts are. Why? Richard fears that she may be a political prisoner, that the government's making a point with Lucy Connelly. Well, they should stop making this point because it's getting a bit much, don't you think? Let's talk about Lucy Connelly to Alan, a new caller from Canterbury. Hello, Alan, what would you like to say?
Hello there, Kevin. Well, I did 27 years in the job, and that I'm absolutely mortified why this woman hasn't at least been released on temporary day licence.
When you say in the job, you're a prison officer?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, go on, sorry.
But even at this late stage in her sentence, now, for such a petty crime, she should be in open conditions.
Yeah, she's been. They're treating her as if she's some sort of danger to the community, danger to society. She's not a violent woman until she wrote those stupid words on Twitter. She's never had an offence to her name in her life, not even a speeding ticket or a parking ticket. This woman is not a danger. She certainly should have, at the very least. You're saying it's normal practice, isn't it, for a mother with young children to be allowed out to see them, right?
Of course it is. Of course it is. She's just a government puppet now.
That's
nothing
right.
else.
Yeah. Have you seen this before? The kind of unfair treatment of prisoners for external reasons?
Well, there always are outside influences, but I'm afraid that's a fact of life. It goes on.
Yeah.
But
would you recognise what Richard Tice is suggesting? That?
Oh, indeed. If Richard wants to pick up the phone, give him my phone number. I will talk to Richard. Yeah. Gladly.
Well, listen, Alan, thank you so much. A very good call. Interesting. Alan, new caller from Canterbury, was a prison officer. So he says that he recognises what's going on here, and she may well be something of a political prisoner, being treated differently because of her political circumstances. Certainly, her husband, Ray, has been on this show a couple of times. He said the last time we spoke, he said, look, she doesn't get special treatment, she doesn't get any favours. And when she says, why am I being treated like this, she's told by the prison officers, well, you're Lucy Connelly. So she is this special case. So something bad has gone on at Peterborough Jail, and we need to get to the bottom of it. Petri Hoskin is in the studio. Hello, Petri.
Hello there. How are you doing today?
I'm all right. Yeah, good. What's on your show?
Right, we're going to be heading to The Hague to talk about NATO and how important this meeting is, what they're likely to be discussing, the fact that it's been cut down by a day because that's how long